Chapter 1. The sky was clear and cloudless. What fine day! Swoosh! All of a sudden, high up in the sky where ordinary people couldn't see, a phantom flew over at lightning speed from afar. As the phantom gradually approached, it could be clearly seen that it was a middle-aged man with a somewhat wretched figure. Yes, it was a cultivator. If someone from the cultivation world were here, they would be able to tell his identity from his clothes. He was a cultivator from Zhushenzong, one of the 10 great sects of the cultivation world. Zhushenzong was one of the 10 great sects of the cultivation world. Judging from the middle-aged man's sorry state, he seemed to be being hunted down. Who dared to hunt down a cultivator from Zhushenzong? Swoosh! Not far behind the middle-aged man, a streak of red light streaked across the sky at a terrifying speed. It didn't take long for the middle-aged man to catch up to Zhushenzong. Don't push me too far, Linyu. The middle-aged man from Zhushenzong glanced at Linyu, who was quickly catching up to him, and despair flashed across his face. Linyu was a genius from the Celestial Expanse sect, one of the 10 great sects of the cultivation world. He'd reached the body fusion realm at such a young age and was a genius. Lu Feng, you're seriously injured and are no match for me. There's nowhere to run. You'd best hand over the Hichu Luo Shu, and I'll spare your life, Linyu said coldly as he caught up. However, the fervent look in his eyes betrayed him. The Hichu Luo Shu, it was known as the #1 book in the world and had an extremely mysterious origin. It was said that if one could fully comprehend it, they would be able to comprehend the mysteries of the universe and ascend to immortality. Becoming a god or immortal would be a trivial matter. Some could even control the universe and laugh proudly at the world. However, the Hichu Luo Shu had only appeared in the world of immortals. Every time it appeared, it would cause a storm of blood. Why had it appeared in the cultivation world now? And why was it in the possession of a mere body fusion cultivator? Linyu, you've gone too far. Hichu Luo Shu belongs to me, Lu Feng, and to me, Zhushenzong. How dare you openly steal my things? Are you trying to start a war between the Void Sky sect and the Sky Expanse sect? Lu Feng increased his strength to the limit and flew towards Zhushenzong as fast as he could. They were both at the body integration stage. However, he was no match for Linyu at all. He was only at the early stage of the combination realm, while Linyu was at the late stage of the combination realm. With Linyu's strength, he could easily kill him. The reason why he hadn't been killed yet was because of Lu Feng's unparalleled speed. Otherwise, he would have been killed long ago, and Hichu Luo Shu would have been taken away. Hearing this, Linyu frowned. Zhushenzong and Tianyinzong were both one of the top 10 sects in the world of cultivation. The two sects had always been on good terms, even if it was only on the surface. However, if news of this were spread, Zhushenzong would definitely wage war against the Sky Expanse sect. Even the whole world of cultivation would be turned into a bloody mess. Lu Feng, don't try to use Zhushenzong to pressure me. As long as I kill you today, who will know that it was me who killed you? And Hichu Luo Shu will naturally be mine. If I can figure out the secret of Hichu Luo Shu, even Zhushenzong can't do anything to me. Linyu smiled ferociously. Lu Feng's words made him a little afraid. If news of this were spread, Linyu's situation would become extremely dangerous. However, the more this was the case, the more his killing intent was aroused. Linyu, how dare you kill me? Zhushenzong will never let you go. Lu Feng was furious. However, because of this, the injuries on his body were aggravated. Endless pain spread to his brain, but it caused his speed to slow down slightly. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Linyu suddenly sped up and approached Lu Feng's back. Boom! A ray of red energy exploded from Linyu's body. It was earth-shattering, and it carried a terrifying force as it ruthlessly attacked Lu Feng. Lu Feng was shocked. He roared and immediately turned around, raising his strength to the limit. Boom! In an instant, 30 faint silhouettes of horned dragons appeared above his head. With a loud roar, Lu Feng viciously punched out. 30 horned dragon phantoms transformed into an incomparably huge mass of energy, roaring as they strangled towards Linyu. Seeing this, Lin Yu sneered. The strength of 30 horned dragons? You can't even withstand a single blow. As he spoke, the red divine light in Lin Yu's body surged, and a terrifying aura exploded from his body. After a series of astonishing dragon roars, 35 horned dragons appeared in the sky above his head. Die! Lin Yu sneered and quickly punched out. The 35 horned dragons gathered into a red torrent and directly attacked Lu Feng. Chapter 2. Boom! After a deafening explosion, the two forces collided violently. However, the result was the same. How could Lu Feng's 30 horned dragons be a match for Lin Yu's 35 horned dragons? Lu Feng's force was torn into pieces. Then, Lin Yu's terrifying force landed on Lu Feng's body. Puff! Lu Feng was an expert in the form synthesis realm, so his body was extremely strong. After being hit by the force of 35 horned dragons, he did not die immediately. However, Lu Feng was not in a good condition either. His body was sent flying like a kite with a broken string. During this process, he kept spitting out large mouthfuls of blood. Lu Feng died. Lin Yu laughed ferociously. His body swayed, and he chased after Lu Feng. The force of 35 horned dragons attacked again. Lu Feng was no match for Lin Yu at all. Moreover, he was already severely injured earlier. At this moment, the 30 horned dragons above his head became even more illusory, as though they were about to disappear. On the contrary, the 35 horned dragons above Lin Yu's head were coiled and almost materialized. It was obvious who was superior. If there was no miracle, Lu Feng would not be able to escape death today. The #1 extraordinary book in the world would also be taken away by Lin Yu. Lin Yu, you forced me to do this. Lu Feng's face was filled with despair. However, there was a strong determination in his despair. At the same time, Lu Feng's aura continued to rise. Moreover, the 30 horned dragons above his head were rapidly solidifying and almost materializing. Lu Feng, what are you doing? Are you crazy? Lin Yu roared furiously when he saw this. His body swayed, and he retreated rapidly. Lin Yu, you forced me to do this. Since you want me to die, I'll drag you down with me. Let's perish together. Lu Feng's aura suddenly soared as he spoke. Boom! After a loud explosion, the 30 horned dragons above his head materialized instantly. At the same time, Lu Feng's body swayed, and he turned into a trace in the void as he charged toward Lin Yu. Lu Feng wanted to perish together. As it turned out, Lu Feng realized that his body was severely injured. Even if he managed to escape this time, he would not be able to recover from his injuries. Moreover, with his current strength, it was impossible for him to escape from Lin Yu's pursuit. He had no choice but to self-destruct. Perish together with Lin Yu. Rumble. As Lu Feng charged toward Lin Yu, the 30 horned dragons above his head that had materialized began to burn. Burning energy. After burning energy, Lu's aura, his aura was 10 times more powerful than before. However, due to the fact that he was burning his power, the power of 300 horned dragons did not appear above his head, even though he was 10 times stronger than before. Since you want me to die, let's perish together. Lu Feng's strength far surpassed Lin Yu. He rushed up in an instant, opened his arms, and directly hugged Lin Yu. At the same time, he roared loudly in Lin Yu's ear, his face ferocious. You lunatic, let go of me. Get out of my way, get out of my way. Lin Yu roared in horror. He punched Lu Feng's body again and again. Lu Feng's flesh and blood splattered all over the place. However, Lu Feng did not care. The horned dragons above his head burned even more fiercely. Let's perish together. Lu Feng roared madly. No matter how Lin Yu attacked him, he did not let go. Rumble. After an earth-shattering boom, the space suddenly exploded. The extremely terrifying impact actually tore the space apart, creating spatial cracks. Even the entire sky seemed to have been shaken by the terrifying explosion. At the moment of the explosion, the Great Xia dynasty, which was far away on the ground, was deeply shaken. The citizens of the Great Xia dynasty rushed out and looked at the void in horror. They thought that the end of the world had come. However, no one saw anything because Lu Feng and Lin Yu were fighting in the void, far away from the ground. How could these ordinary humans see anything? Moreover, after Lu Feng self-destructed, Lin Yu, and Lin Yu were blown to smithereens. Nothing was left of them. No, after they exploded, an ordinary-looking yellowish picture slowly floated down from the void. No one knew where it ended up. The world's #1 book, Hichu Luo Shu, appeared out of nowhere and was lost for no reason. It was as if no one knew about it. Chapter 3. Time flowed like water. A few months passed in the blink of an eye, and they entered the harsh winter season. Tianzhu Mountain was a famous mountain near the capital of the Great Xia Dynasty, an E-city. The Tianzhu Mountain was famous for its strange peaks, steep cliffs, and its highest peak, which was as high as a heavenly pillar. In the harsh winter season, snow sealed the mountain, and the entire Tianzhu Mountain was covered in white. Looking from afar, the sky and earth were the same color. Thump, thump, thump. Suddenly, the sound of messy footsteps could be heard from the foot of the Tianzhu Mountain. After turning around a mountain, a group of strange beasts were rushing toward the depths of the Tianzhu Mountain. On the strange beasts, a group of handsome men and pretty women were sitting and laughing. In such a harsh winter season, when the snow sealed the mountain, they were all wearing thin but extremely luxurious clothes. One look, and one could tell that they were martial artists. They must be the aristocratic warriors of the Great Xia Dynasty. The group of more than 10 people laughed and rushed into the depths of the Tianzhu Mountain. The strange beasts under them stepped on the snow as if it was flat ground. They were so fast that they disappeared from the foot of the Tianzhu Mountain. Right after they disappeared, a young man with a thin face and thin clothes rode a yellow horse slowly into the pillar of Heaven's mountains. He was cold to the point that he was giving off a cold vibe. "Morongyu, you lowly servant, get your ass over here." A sharp and ear-piercing voice suddenly came from the Tianzhu Mountain. Hearing this voice, the youth was shocked. His thin and weak body under the thin clothes could not help but tremble slightly. It was as if this voice made him very afraid. But then a cold glint flashed in the depths of his eyes. "Lowly servant," Morongyu sneered. "As a descendant of the Morong clan, you became a servant because you can't practice martial arts? Because you are a collateral descendant, you became a servant of the direct descendant? Because your parents died early, you can bully and humiliate me? Even worse than an ordinary servant?" In the harsh winter season, heavy snow swirled in the air. Snowflakes as tall as a person piled up on the original path of the pillar of Heaven's mountains. The young man was Morongyu. He was a branch descendant of the Morong clan, but had been reduced to a servant. At this moment, he was riding a thin and weak yellow horse, slowly heading towards the pillar of Heaven's mountains. They were different from the elite disciples of the Morong clan. They rode on strange beasts, and the snow was like flat ground. They easily rushed into the depths of the pillar of Heaven's mountains. The pitiful Morong did not have enough to eat. His body was extremely thin and weak, and he was forced to endure the cold of winter to enter the depths of the pillar of Heaven's mountains. In the depths of the pillar of Heaven's mountains, on the flat ground beside the cliff, a few elite disciples of the Morong clan were waiting impatiently with the other disciples of the prestigious clans. "Ling Morong, what's wrong with your servant? Why hasn't he walked in yet?" The young master of the Yin clan, Yin Dong, looked at Ling Morong and said unhappily. Ling Morong's eyes flashed with murderous intent. He said in disgust, "That damned servant! Did he die on the way here?" "Ling Morong, I don't want to criticize you. You have so many servants in the Morong clan. Why didn't you bring a few more people over? Why did you have to choose that brat? He's so thin, it's still a problem whether he can come in. Look, how much time did he waste? We were originally excited to come here to hunt, but now we're not in the mood." Su Qian frowned and said unhappily, "Everyone, don't be unhappy. It's still early today. If it wasn't for the fact that we were worried about our mounts, we would have gone hunting directly. However, that damn Morongyu, when he comes, I will definitely teach him a lesson. A young girl of about 28 years old with a pretty face, but a sinister expression walked up and said with a smile. She was the elite disciple of the Murong clan, Murong Yen. She was the owner of the sharp voice that Murong Yu heard at the mountain pass. Let's wait a little longer. An elite disciple said with a frown. For a moment, the people here were very unhappy because Murong Yu had not arrived. Chapter 4. Murong Ling and Ling Ling were even more upset, because it was their idea to bring Murong Yu here. Originally, these elite disciples from the major families all had servants. But to save trouble, Murong Ling brought Murong Yu here alone. It was not because Murong Ling treated Murong Yu very well, but because Murong Yu had very good experience in taking care of exotic beasts and other mounts. Because in Murong Ling's family, Murong Yu was usually a servant who took care of exotic beasts. Murong Yu was so cold that his whole body trembled. His clothes were thin, and he was not those elite disciples, but a martial arts master. He was an ordinary person, a trash who could not practice martial arts. His journey into the depths of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains had almost cost him his life. We're finally here. Murong Yu's teeth kept chattering. Riding on the thin yellow horse, he had already seen Murong Ling and the others. You lowly servant, why didn't you wait until it was dark? Seeing Murong Yu slowly walking over, Murong Yan's anger rose. She cursed sharply and directly lashed out with her whip. Ha! Murong Yu did not know any martial arts. And Murong Yan was also the leader of the younger generation of Murong Ling's family. Her strength had reached the 6th heavenly layer of martial arts. Murong Yu didn't even have time to react when the whip lashed out. Instead, he was ruthlessly whipped onto his body. The huge force almost broke Murong Yu's thin body into 2 pieces and directly sent Murong Yu flying. Rip! The sound of cloth tearing came from Murong Yu's body. Murong Yu's thin and poor quality clothes were directly torn apart by the barbs of the whip, revealing Murong Yu's thin and weak body. Shocking wounds appeared on Murong Yu's body, and then bright red blood gurgled out. Puff! Murong Yu seemed to have suffered a heavy blow, and his whole body seemed to be torn apart. His blood and chi surged up like a river overturning the sea. There was a sweet taste in his throat, and when he opened his mouth, he involuntarily spat out a mouthful of blood. Puff! Murong Yu fell fiercely onto the snowy ground. His body was in intense pain. His frail body was on the verge of falling apart after being whipped by Murong Yen. Although Murong Yen did not use her full strength, she was after all a master of the 6th celestial realm. Murong Yu was already strong enough that she did not directly kill Murong Yu. However, Murong Yu's body was originally thin and weak. First, he suffered Murong Yan's swift and violent blow, and then he fell hard from the void to the ground. This huge impact, in addition to his previous injuries. Murong Yu spat out another mouthful of blood, and his vision turned black, and he suddenly fainted. The bright red blood stained the snow-white snow, and it was extremely beautiful. Looking at the unconscious Murong Yu, Murong Yen was afraid. She grabbed her brother Murong Ling's hand and asked nervously, "Brother, is he dead?" Sensing Murong Yan's fear, Murong Ling just shook his head and smiled faintly. "Even if he's dead, it's nothing. He's just a servant. Don't be afraid." "That's right. He's just a servant. If he's dead, he's dead. At most, we'll just buy another one. Or I'll just give you a few," Yin Dong said with a smile. Murong Yin snorted coldly, and her face turned cold. "There are plenty of servants in my house. He's just worried that after he's dead, there won't be anyone to look after our mounts. Wait for me here. I'll go and see if he's dead." Murong Ling strode over to Murong Yu's side. Then he realized that Murong Yu was only unconscious. "He's just unconscious, he's not dead." Murong Ling frowned, and then a fierce look flashed across his eyes. He raised his leg and kicked Murong Yu away. Puff! After being kicked by Murong Ling, Murong Yu woke up from his coma. He opened his mouth and spat out another mouthful of blood. Moreover, what shocked him the most was that he was actually soaring into the sky as if he was riding on the clouds. Then, he felt that he was falling down at a very fast speed. Murong Ling kicked himself off the cliff. This bastard kicked himself off the cliff. This was Murong Yu's last thought before he fainted. Brother, why did you kick him down? After Murong Ling sent Murong Yu flying with a kick, he leisurely walked back to his brother. Murong Yin asked curiously, "He's going to die sooner or later, so I might as well fulfill his wish," Murong Ling said with a faint smile. Murong Yin nodded, indicating that she understood. As for the other disciples, their faces were calm and indifferent. It was as if they were used to this kind of thing and didn't find it strange at all. Chapter 5. Since no one is looking after the exotic beasts, we can only tie them up here. Let's hope they don't run away. After tying up the exotic beasts, they picked up their bows, weapons, and other equipment and started hunting. The Pillar of Heaven's mountains was filled with strange peaks and cliffs. There were often powerful exotic beasts and monsters at the bottom of the cliffs. Therefore, the bottom of the cliffs was mostly uninhabited. Bang! In the middle of a cliff, a huge rock extended out from the cliff wall. It looked like a huge platform. All of a sudden, a black shadow descended from the sky at an extremely terrifying speed and landed heavily on the ground. The powerful impact even sent the accumulated snow on the platform flying. Upon closer inspection, it was a person. If Murong Ling was here, he would know that this person was Murong Yu, who he had kicked off the cliff. Fortunately, it was winter now, and the snow was very thick. The thick layer of snow had offset Murong Yu's impact. Had it been any other season, he would have turned into a pile of minced meat by now. However, even so, all the bones in Murong Yu's body had been smashed to pieces. If a miracle did not happen, Murong Yu would probably die here. Crimson blood flowed out of Murong Yu's body like a stream, endlessly flowing down to the ground. Even if he didn't die from the fall, without the demon blood, it wouldn't be long before he died from excessive blood loss. Bang! However, at this moment, a brilliant golden light suddenly erupted from the ground below Murong Yu. Although the golden light was brilliant, it was not glaring. Moreover, the moment this golden light appeared, it wrapped around Murong Yu like a cocoon. What a chaotic celestial body! An almost inaudible voice suddenly sounded. If Murong Yu was still conscious at this moment, he would probably be scared half to death by the sudden appearance of this voice. Murong Yu, who was wrapped in the golden light, gradually changed from a painful expression to a peaceful expression, as if he was sleeping soundly. If someone else was here, they would have noticed that Murong Yu, who was wrapped in the golden light, had stopped bleeding at some point in time. Furthermore, the wounds inflicted by Murong Yan's whip and the injuries sustained when he fell off the cliff were rapidly healing. In the end, the scars on Murong Yu's body, whether they were new or old, slowly disappeared. So much so that Murong Yu's originally thin and weak body, along with his sallow and emaciated appearance, was gradually becoming plump and round. Murong Yu, who was in a deep sleep, did not know that his body had begun to transform because of this fall. His body had transformed, but would Murong Yu's fate also transform because of this? Unknowingly, the layer of golden light that wrapped Murong Yu's body like a cocoon had disappeared. However, the unconscious Murong Yu still showed no signs of waking up. The heavy snow swirled and white snowflakes fluttered down from the sky. Gradually, Murong Yu's body was buried by the snowflakes. After a long time, the snow on the platform that was shaken off by Murong Yu's fall accumulated again, burying Murong Yu on the ground. Murong Yu was unconscious, his clothes were torn, and he was buried by the snow. If there was no miracle, he would sleep for a lifetime. Time passed, and without knowing when, the sky turned dark and then bright. Murong, you had been sleeping on the platform above the cliff for a day and a night. Was Murong Yu dead? Suddenly, the thick layer of snow began to tremble. Then, a voice came from under the snow. Huh? I'm not dead yet. Where am I? What's so heavy on me? Unknowingly, Murong Yu had regained consciousness. He woke up immediately. However, when he woke up, he found that he was pressed down to the point that he could not breathe. He opened his eyes, but he did not see anything. What the hell? Muronyu struggled slightly, and then pushed up with both hands. Bang! Just as Muronyu pushed out with both hands, he suddenly felt a warm current rushing out from between his hands. Then he saw a shocking scene. Chapter 6. Those things in front of him could not even withstand a single blow and were all pushed away by him. At this time, he could clearly see that what he had pushed away was actually a thick layer of snow. Snow swirled in the air. When there was no more snow piling up on Muronyu, he stood up abruptly with a confused look on his face. Where is this? Wasn't I kicked off the cliff by that bastard Muronling? Don't tell me I'm not dead. Muronyu muttered to himself as a murderous intent flashed in his eyes. When he thought of the two siblings, Muronyu gnashed his teeth in hatred. He did not have any interactions with these two siblings. However, he did not know why these two siblings would always torture him for no reason. All these years, Muronyu was tortured by Muronling and Ling until he was neither dead nor alive. If not for Murongyu's tenacity and perseverance, he would have been killed by the two of them long ago. Sooner or later, I will personally kill the two of you as revenge for the inhumane torture I have suffered for so many years. Muronyu gnashed his teeth and said. However, very quickly, he laughed bitterly. He was only a waste without any status who could not practice martial arts. And Muronling and Ling were the geniuses of the Muron clan. Why did he have to take revenge? Revenge? Murongyu's eyes revealed a look of hatred. That's not right. I was clearly kicked off the cliff. Why didn't I die? How did I push away the pile of snow with such great strength just now? Or the two streams of heat in my arms? Could it be the legendary inner energy? Could it be that being kicked off the cliff this time was a blessing in disguise, and I accidentally ate some heavenly treasure? Thinking of this, Murongyu's eyes shone with excitement. However, very quickly, he cried out in shock. This was because he realized that on this platform, he could neither go up nor down. So what if he had a fortuitous encounter? If he couldn't leave this place, he would eventually starve to death. If only I were like those immortal cultivators, riding on clouds, moving mountains, and filling seas. Leaving this place is just a matter of a thought. Muronyu suddenly sighed. The so-called immortal cultivators were the cultivators of the cultivation world. These cultivators were very powerful. It was said that they could stand on the ground, carry mountains on their shoulders, and have the sky above their heads. They were very powerful. Compared to the martial artists of the secular world, they were billions of times stronger. Without food, they will starve to death sooner or later. It's winter and it's so cold. I'll freeze to death sooner or later. Muronyu sat on a protruding rock on the platform and muttered to himself with a worried expression. Looking at the snow-white world before him, Muronyu reflexively hugged his arms tightly. However, when he hugged her, he was shocked again. Only then did he realize that the injuries on his body no longer hurt. More importantly, he didn't feel cold at all. It's over. Something must have gone wrong with my body. I don't feel cold anymore. Strange, I don't feel hungry anymore. The scars on my body are all gone. Muronyu jumped up with a shocked expression. It's over. Am I really dead? Is this the underworld? It said that as long as one is in a spiritual state, one won't feel cold, heat, or hunger. Muronyu jumped up and down on the platform. His heart was a little frightened. Kid, stop jumping up and down. You're not dead. Suddenly, a voice sounded in Muronyu's ears. Who is it? Muronyu was shocked and almost scared to death. He glanced around, trying to find the person who was talking. No need to look. You can't see me. Do you want to know who I am? Did you see the place where you were lying before? Did you see the picture scroll on the ground? The voice continued to sound in Muronyu's ears. Who are you? Muronyu tried to calm himself down and asked. During this process, he really did see the picture scroll. Go and pick up the picture scroll. Then you can see me. The voice continued. You're not thinking of killing me for money, are you? I know that there are some people in this world who can take over other people's bodies. You're not thinking of taking over other people's bodies, are you? Murong Yu's mind suddenly flashed with this word that he accidentally heard before. Kid, if I didn't save you, you would have died long ago. Moreover, if I wanted to take over your body, I would have done it long ago. Why would I wait for you to wake up? With your physique, even if you gave it to me, I wouldn't want it. The person's words were merciless. Murong Yu laughed self-deprecatingly. Yes, I'm just a trash. As he spoke, Murong Yu strode forward and picked up the picture scroll. Chapter 7. It was a slightly yellowed picture scroll. There were some mountains, rivers, and cities drawn on it. Murong Yu didn't look carefully at what it was. In fact, he didn't understand it either. How can I see you? Murong Yu asked. Concentrate and use your mind to explore the picture scroll. Then you'll be able to see me, the voice said. Murong Yu clenched his teeth. Without any hesitation, he concentrated his mind and explored the picture scroll. Boom! The moment Murong Yu's mind touched the picture scroll, he felt an enormous pulling force wrap around him. Then, the scene in front of him changed, and he appeared in a strange space. Kid, how is it? I didn't lie to you, did I? A voice came from in front of Murong Yu. He looked forward and saw a young man of about 20 years old looking at him with a smile. Are you talking to me? Murong Yu looked at the other party for a long time before saying this. The young man staggered and almost fell to the ground. I'm not talking to you. Do you think a ghost is talking to you? Who are you? Where is this? Where am I? What exactly happened? Murong Yu's words were extremely fast as he asked all the questions in his mind. This is the world inside the picture scroll, which is the picture scroll you just saw. As for me, you can call me Hichu Luoshu. I'm what you call a weapon spirit. The young man, who is Hichu Luoshu, said. Hichu Luoshu. This picture scroll was actually Hichu Luoshu. It was actually the #1 book in the world that Lu Feng and Lin Yu had fought over. Weapon spirit? Hearing these two words, Murong Yu's eyes shone with a blazing light. He knew about weapon spirits. Only those divine weapons and magical treasures of self-cultivators could possibly have a weapon spirit. And as long as a divine weapon or magic treasure had a weapon spirit, it would be a powerful magic treasure or divine weapon. Are you really a weapon spirit? In that case, do you have any immortal cultivation techniques? Is there any miraculous pill that can change my physique so that I can practice martial arts? Murong Yu's eyes lit up, and he asked a series of questions in rapid succession. Who am I? I am Hichu Luoshu, the #1 book in the world. I have nothing. I can even tell you that there are countless divine pills and miraculous medicines in this space. Hichu Luoshu said proudly. Then can you give me some? I want to practice martial arts too. I don't want to be trash anymore. Murong Yu looked at Hichu Luoshu with a hopeful expression. Sorry, I can't. Hichu Luoshu shook his head and said firmly. Murong Yu was disappointed. You're too stingy. Kid, it's not that I, Hichu, am stingy. It's just that those things are too advanced. Even if I give them to you, you won't be able to digest them. Your body will explode and your soul will perish. You'll be deader than dead. Well, as a powerful weapon spirit, do you have any way to help me improve my physique? I can't practice martial arts. I'm trash. At this point, Murong Yu said with a gloomy expression. Although he had been carrying the title of trash for more than 10 years and had long been accustomed to all kinds of ridicule, he was still only a teenager. Who didn't want to have a powerful body? Not to mention Murong Yu, who didn't have any status. He was even more eager to become strong and change his destiny. Brat, haven't you realized that you're no longer afraid of the cold or hunger? Not only that, but your body also possesses great strength. He too glared at Murong Yu, exasperated at his failure to meet expectations. Murong Yu scratched his head in embarrassment. I was just about to ask that question. However, do I have any hope of getting rid of this trash physique? You're not trash. You're a chaotic, celestial body. Hichu said loudly, word by word. I'm not trash. Hearing Hichu's words, Murong Yu immediately became excited. His body trembled because of too much excitement. His eyes shone with an inexplicable light. It's just, suddenly, Murong Yu fell silent and sighed. Forget it. Don't comfort me. I can't even practice the most basic martial arts mental cultivation method. If I'm not trash, what am I? Seeing Murong Yu's emotions fluctuate, Hichu, the weapon spirit who had lived for countless thoughts, also had the urge to beat him up. Chapter 8. What Hichu said was the truth. Not only was Murong Yu not a waste, but he had the most powerful physique in the world, the chaotic celestial body. However, Hichu's honest words turned into comforting words in Murong Yu's ears. To be honest, Hichu was somewhat angry in his heart. However, how could Hichu understand Murong Yu's mood? Not to mention the immortal cultivators of the cultivation world, even the great Xia dynasty. Murong Yu was unable to cultivate the most common martial arts. In the great Xia dynasty, the Murong clan was an extremely powerful martial arts clan. In the Murong clan, even those lowly servants knew some martial arts. Some of the powerful servants had even reached the third heavenly layer, or even the fourth heavenly layer. However, as a branch descendant of the Murong clan, Murong Yu was completely unable to cultivate. It was precisely because of this that in this martial world, he was a complete and utter trash. In the Murong clan, he had the ability to be a branch descendant of the Murong clan, but he didn't have any status. Even the lowly servants looked down on him. All these years, Murong Yu had to bear the label of trash. His life was simply too bitter, and after so many years, he had already given up hope. A person like me, no matter where I go, is a waste. A waste that can't even compare to ordinary servants. Murong Yu laughed at himself, his face full of desolation. Boy, before meeting me, perhaps you were a waste that couldn't cultivate martial arts. However, from the moment you met me, you're no longer a waste, but a chaotic celestial body, the most powerful physique in the world. Didn't you say you wanted to cultivate? Didn't you say you wanted to trample all those who looked down on you and humiliated you under your feet? If you still look down on yourself, then even if you have a chaotic celestial body, you're still a waste. A useless waste. Hichu suddenly sneered. Murong Yu flew into a rage. My body is trash. You can insult my body, but you can't insult my self-esteem. Do you still have self-respect? Hichu sneered. What I said before was the truth. If you don't believe me, I can send you down now. You can go back to Murong's house and continue being a waste. Murong Yu didn't say anything. He just looked at Hichu coldly and said, Don't lie to me and make fun of me. Otherwise, even if I'm not strong enough, I'll still fight you to the death. Hichu sneered. Why would I lie to you? You're not qualified. Murong Yu fell silent. After muttering to himself for a long time, he tried his best to sort out what had happened yesterday and today. After he calmed down, he looked at Hichu. I want to cultivate. I want to become stronger. But I don't have anything now. Since you're the legendary device spirit, you should have some powerful cultivation method for me, right? Murong Yu looked at Hichu and said calmly. Yes, I happen to have a cultivation method suitable for your constitution, Hichu said indifferently. However, there are still many things I don't understand. What is a chaotic celestial body? What is this Hichu Luoshu? Can you tell me in detail what's going on? So you're also interested in knowing. I thought you'd been thinking about yourself. He too ridiculed. Then, he continued to tell Murong Yu everything that he knew. It turned out that after Murong Yu was kicked off the cliff by Murong Ling, he fell on the ground. He fell onto the platform and smashed onto the He-Tu and Luo Shu. The blood that flowed from Murong Yu's body just happened to flow into the He-Tu and the Book of the Luo. Just like that, Murong Yu, the He-Tu and the Book of the Luo recognized each other as their masters. It was because of this that Hichu Luo Shu activated the householder function and healed Murong Yu's injuries. It even directly transformed Murong Yu's constitution. During this process, Hichu Luo Shu was pleasantly surprised to find that Murong Yu's constitution was not trash. It was the most powerful constitution in the world, the chaotic celestial body. There were all kinds of constitutions in the world, such as the indestructible golden body, the war god body, the pure yang body, and so on. As for Murong Yu's constitution, It was known as the most powerful constitution, second to none. Moreover, Murong-Yu did not know that his constitution was not only the most powerful, but also the only one. Other constitutions, such as the indestructible golden body, could appear in the world at the same time. However, only one chaotic celestial body could appear. For example, Murong-Yu was a chaotic celestial body. As long as he was alive, he would be the only chaotic celestial body in the world. If a second chaotic celestial body appeared, it meant that Murong-Yu was dead. Hichu was very unhappy that he had unintentionally recognized Murong-Yu, a powerless mortal, as his master. However, when he learned that Murong-Yu actually possessed the number one physique in the world, the chaotic celestial body, he too became excited. Chapter 9. Hichu believed that as long as he trained Murong-Yu, he would be able to quickly rise. It was precisely because of this that Hichu was so patient with Murong-Yu and even allowed Murong-Yu to enter the painting. Otherwise, Murong-Yu would really be a good-for-nothing. Even if Murong-Yu recognized him as his master, Hichu could not directly kill Murong-Yu. He also had various methods to kill Murong-Yu. He too said a lot, and it took him half a day to say the most basic things. As for Murong-Yu, it took him half a day to digest all of it. The Hichu Luo Shu is the number one book in the world. It has a self-contained space and contains endless divine weapons, magic treasures, cultivation techniques, and even resources. Of course, whether or not you have the ability to obtain these resources depends on your own ability. I can't give you the things inside directly. That's too far away. It's not something I can imagine now. I just want to grow bigger now. Hichu, do you have any cultivation techniques suitable for me to practice? As Murong-Yu said, those divine pills, divine weapons, and so on were too far away for him. Moreover, he also knew that he and the Hichu Luo Shu had recognized him as their master. Then, the entire Hichu Luo Shu was his. As long as he was strong enough, wouldn't he be able to squander the things inside? However, the prerequisite was that he could practice. The chaotic celestial body is the number one physique in the world. It's impossible to practice ordinary cultivation techniques. Hearing Hichu's words, Murong-Yu's face showed a trace of disappointment. However, it just so happens that I have a powerful cultivation technique here called the Records of the Chaotic Celestial Body. It's tailor-made for you. Hichu said with a smile. That's great. Quickly give it to me. Murong-Yu was excited. He was really too excited. After waiting for more than 10 years, he, who had always been called a good-for-nothing, could finally practice cultivation. Others would not be able to understand this kind of excitement. Hichu did not hesitate. With a flip of his hand, a jade slip appeared, and then he handed it to Murong-Yu. You can see it when you use your mind power. Murong-Yu took the jade slip and sent his consciousness into it, as instructed. Boom! At this moment, Murong-Yu suddenly found himself in a space where he could not see his fingers. When he looked up, he saw lines of words floating in the void in front of him. When Murong-Yu came into contact with those words, they seemed to turn into streams of light and directly entered his body before he could react. At the same time, he felt that there was an additional memory of the records of the chaotic celestial body. However, Murong-Yu could only see the cultivation method for the first heaven. He knew that because of his current strength, he couldn't see the rest of the cultivation method for the time being. Bang! After Murong-Yu finished reading the records of the chaotic celestial body, the jade slip in Murong-Yu's hand suddenly exploded. At this point, Murong-Yu was the only one in the world who had this cultivation technique. However, even if he had the corresponding cultivation technique, Murong-Yu would not practice it. It should be known that he could not practice at all before, so he had no experience in cultivation. Fortunately, Hichu was here. Although he was only a weapon spirit, and a damaged one at that, his former master was an extremely powerful existence. Hichu had been by that person's side all this time. How rich was his experience? Moreover, he too himself was an expert, and he possessed extremely abundant cultivation experience. In the following time, Hichu began to teach Murong-Yu how to practice. During this process, Murong gradually understood everything about this world. A brand new and huge door slowly opened in front of Murong, and a new world gradually appeared in front of Murong. Murong knew that from the moment he was kicked off the cliff by Murong, his fate had changed. As for how far he could go on this path, it all depended on his own efforts. Murong? Murong's family? Murong, will go back. What you owe me, I will take back from you 100 times over. Aren't you all high and mighty? A piece of trash, will trample all of you under my feet. Murong's eyes narrowed slightly, and thousands of thoughts flashed through his mind. Then, he quickly entered a state of cultivation. He looked at Murong quietly and seriously cultivating. Hichu, who was not far away from him, showed a trace of ruthlessness on his face. Master, don't worry. I have found the young master. I will teach the young master well and avenge you. I will kill all your old enemies and leave no one alive. Chapter 10. In the Hichu Luoshu world. Hichu Luoshu was the #1 book in the world. Inside, there was a world that was almost identical to the outside world. There were mountains, rivers, and even oceans. There were even all kinds of plants. At a cursory glance, they were basically the same as the outside world. In front of a huge boulder that weighed tens of thousands of pounds, a slightly thin young man was looking at the boulder with a dignified expression. Suddenly, the young man roared fiercely and punched out rapidly. Boom! Just as he punched out, a powerful aura burst out from his body. At this moment, 2 flood dragon phantoms appeared above his head, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. As the young man punched out, the 2 WRMS above his head roared. Then they quickly intertwined and fused together, forming a powerful airflow that violently collided with the huge boulder in front of them. Boom! After the earth-shattering sound, the mountain shook and the ground shook. Gravel flew and dust flew. When the dust fell to the ground, the huge boulder that was still standing on the ground earlier had already disappeared. What replaced it was a ground full of broken stones. The 10,000-pound boulder was actually shattered by the young man's punch. At this moment, a young man came out from behind and said faintly, "The strength of 2 dragons is barely enough." Murong turned around and looked at the young man with an excited expression. "Hichu, I did it. I can finally cultivate. And I even cultivated the strength of 2 dragons. It's only the strength of 2 dragons, and it's the lowest level of the flood dragon. Look at how useless you are. If you cultivate the strength of the heavenly dragon, wouldn't you be so excited that you want to die?" Hichu said with some disdain. Murong just smiled and didn't care at all. No one could understand Murong's mood. A trash who couldn't cultivate had reached the strength of 2 dragons in one fell swoop. This was not only because of the strength of 2 dragons, but also because he had transformed from trash into a warrior. The power of 2 dragons. I should have reached the second Hoteon stage, right? Murong looked at Hichu and said, although Murong used to be a waste that couldn't practice martial arts, but after all, he grew up in the Murong clan, so he was quite clear about the level division of this world. At the first sky of the acquired realm, there was only 1 flood dragon strength. At the second heavenly layer, one could cultivate the strength of 2 dragons. Speaking of flood dragons, these were not real divine dragons. Instead, it was an illusory image of a divine dragon that was formed along with the realm and strength of the martial artist. The higher the level of the dragon species and the greater the number of dragons, the more powerful that person was. Just like the warriors of this world, in a Hoteon realm, they could only cultivate the power of a flood dragon. At the peak of the 9th heaven of the Hoteon realm, some heaven-defying experts could even reach the strength of 99 dragons. He was extremely powerful. With the strength of 99 Jiao dragons, he could even shatter a mountain with a single punch. Above the Hoteon realm was the Xiantian realm. An important criterion for entering the Xiantian realm was to cultivate the power of the Kuei Long. The Kuei Long was a dragon species that was more advanced than the flood dragon. A Xiantian expert with the power of 1 Kuei long could kill a peak Hotian expert with 99 dragons with a single punch. This was the difference in strength. Murong Yu punched out now, and 2 flood dragons' illusory images appeared. Generally speaking, he had already reached the second sky of the Hotian realm. One must know that he had only cultivated for 2 days. If this cultivation speed was spread out, it would definitely shock the Murong clan and even the entire Great Xia dynasty. Looking at the excited Murong Yu, Hichu really didn't want to give him a blow, but he couldn't help but give him a blow. He shook his head and sighed helplessly. You're too optimistic. Although you have the chaotic celestial body and have the strength of 2 dragons, you've only cultivated for a day. At best, you're just at the entry level. Hearing this, Murong Yu just laughed. So what if he had just entered the entry level? He had just entered the entry level and already had the strength of 2 dragons. He had the strength of the second sky of the Hotian realm. What if he reached the second sky of the Hotian realm? How many flood dragons would he have? 4 or 5? Now, Murong Yu's heart was full of confidence. He knew that as long as he continued to cultivate, one day he would amaze the world with a single feat. He would trample all those who had looked down on him, laughed at him, and humiliated him in the past. At this time, Murong Yu finally understood why he couldn't cultivate before. As the #1 physique in the world, the chaotic celestial body could cultivate other techniques. On the contrary, no matter what technique he cultivated, he would get twice the result with half the effort. The reason why Murong Yu had become a waste that couldn't cultivate was that his meridians were severely tongue-tied. That day, after he was kicked off the cliff by Murong, he inadvertently recognized Hichu Luoshu as his master. At that time, Hichu Luoshu discovered his physique. Immediately, while Hichu Luoshu healed Murong Yu's injuries, he also combed through his meridians. Because of this, Murong Yu had only cultivated for a day before entering the first heavenly layer of the Hotian realm and reaching the strength of 2 dragons. Chapter 11. Hichu, thank you. Murong Yu sincerely thanked Hichu. Hichu just smiled indifferently. If you really want to thank me, then you have to promise me one thing. Not to mention one thing, even if it's 10 or 100 things, as long as I can do it, as long as it doesn't go against my conscience, I will do it. Murong Yu said sincerely. Although he was looked down upon since he was a child, he was raised to be indifferent to everything. But it wasn't that he was cold-blooded. In essence, Murong Yu was a person who knew how to repay kindness. Hichu turned him from a waste into a martial artist. This kind of kindness was like a second parent. How could Murong Yu not repay this great kindness? It's good that you promised, but your strength is too weak now, knowing it won't do you any good. When your strength is enough, I will naturally tell you. Hichu looked at Murong Yu and said slowly. Seeing that Hichu didn't say anything, Murong Yu rolled his eyes and asked, Since you don't want to say, I won't ask. But you have to tell me, what level of strength do I need? Also, let me have a goal to motivate myself. When the day comes when you laugh at the heaven realm, you will have the ability to complete that matter for me. Hichu's eyes flashed with a touch of sadness, but Murong Yu didn't notice. Heaven realm? Murong Yu rolled his eyes and didn't continue to ask. If he continued to ask, he was afraid that he wouldn't have the confidence to cultivate. When he heard this so-called heaven realm, he knew that it wasn't easy to set foot in it. Murong Yu knew that above the Hotian realm, there was the Xiantian realm. And after the Xiantian realm, it was possible to enter the Xiantian realm and become a powerful cultivator. As for the heaven realm, Murong Yu hadn't heard of it, but at least it was more advanced than the Xiantian realm. Laugh at the heaven realm? I don't even know where the Xiantian realm is. I better go cultivate. Murong Yu rolled his eyes and went to cultivate. Looking at Murong Yu seriously cultivating, Hichu's eyes revealed a trace of gratification. Then he also went to cultivate. As an artifact spirit that possessed emotions like a human being, Hichu had hidden many things, one of which was that he was seriously injured. Right now, he didn't even have the ability to help Murong Yu increase his strength. Hichu Luoshu's inner world contained a large number of treasures, which belonged to Hichu's previous master. However, a seal had been placed on it. If one wanted to obtain the treasures inside, other than obtaining Hichu's approval, one also needed to have the corresponding strength. For the time being, Muronyu was unable to touch these treasures. However, the rich chi of heaven and earth here allowed Muronyu to achieve twice the results with half the effort. In just 2 days, Muronyu had already consolidated his Hotian realm and was only 1 step away from the second Hotian realm. In addition to having superior mental cultivation methods, if you want to have a strong battle strength, you need various powerful combat skills, various magic weapons, magic treasures, and so on. Magic weapons and magic treasures are, after all, external. I don't encourage you to rely on these things because, with your physique, the chaotic celestial body will be an extremely powerful magic treasure. However, various combat skills are absolutely indispensable. On this day, Hichu once again explained his cultivation experience to Muronyu. Murongyu's eyes lit up as he listened. The chaotic celestial body, when cultivated to the extreme, would be the most powerful magic weapon and magic treasure. Hichu Luoshu was originally the world's #1 book, the #1 magic treasure. Moreover, in the Hotian or Xiantian realm, even with magic weapons and magic treasures, Muronyu could not exert their power. Now, what he was looking forward to the most was various powerful combat skills. Hichu, what combat skills are you practicing today? What combat skills are there? Seeing that Hichu had stopped explaining, Muronyu could not help but ask excitedly. Hichu suddenly stagnated, and his face revealed an embarrassed expression. This was because he found that although he had many secret skills, and even a considerable number of them were coveted by the Almighty of the Heaven Realm. However, these skills were too advanced and were not suitable for Muronyu to practice at this time. In other words, except for the chaotic celestial body record, which was suitable for Muronyu to practice, Hichu did not have any skills that he could practice at this stage. After all, Hichu's former master was too powerful. How could the secret skills that could enter his eyes be ordinary? Muronyu was greatly disappointed, and finally said gloomily, I can only go back to the Muron clan to see if there are any combat skills that I can practice. Although the Muron clan was not a cultivation family, they also had some combat skills and cultivation methods suitable for Hotian and even Xiantian realm warriors to practice. Chapter 12. I think this combat skill should be suitable for you to practice at your current stage. After searching for a long time in his mind, Hichu finally found a brilliant cultivation method that had no cultivation restrictions. Dragon Elephant Prajna Technique. When Hichu put the mental cultivation method of this combat skill into Murongyu's mind, Muronyu first glanced at it and then exclaimed. An city was the capital of the Great Xia dynasty and one of the top 10 cities in the world. In an city, in addition to the royal family, there were countless aristocratic families. The Murong family, on the other hand, was one of the best among these great families. They were extremely powerful. In the severe winter, heavy snow was falling, but there was not much snow on the streets of an city. Obviously, it was because there were people constantly clearing the snow. Muronyu was wearing a set of clothes that he'd picked up along the way. Actually, it couldn't be considered stealing. Muronyu had left behind some money when he'd picked up the clothes, treating them as if he'd bought them. Murong's clan. Looking at the 3 majestic words above the gate, Murongyu's face showed a complicated expression. The moment he was kicked off the cliff by Murong Ling, he really thought he was dead. But he did not expect that not only did he not die, but on the contrary, he had turned from a trash who could not practice martial arts into a warrior. Originally, Murongyu did not want to come back to Murong's clan like this. However, he had nothing now, not even a suitable martial skill to practice. Moreover, in the cold winter, Murongyu really had no place to go, so he finally chose to come back. Murongyu, you lowly servant, where have you been these 3 days? Just as Murongyu entered Murong's clan, a bitter voice came from the front. Hearing this voice, Murong Yu's eyes flashed with a cold, killing intent. But he quickly covered it up. He looked up and saw that not far in front of him, a young man about 18 or 19 years old was walking toward him with a grim smile. 3 days. Murong Yu suddenly came to a realization and was immediately stunned. How come only 3 days have passed? He had clearly spent 6 days in Hichu Luo Shu. Murong Yu felt strange, but he did not answer the man's question because he was lost in thought, which made the man furious. You son of a bitch, I am asking you a question. Are you deaf or mute? Murong flew into a rage. He came in front of Murong Yu, raised his right foot, and kicked at Murong Yu. Murong was very annoyed. Like Murong Yu, Murong's clan, Murong Yu's clan's clan, Murong Yu's clan's clan. However, within these 3 days, Murong Yu had disappeared into thin air. Their manpower was originally not enough. Now that they were missing one person, the weather was even colder. This made Murong and the others double the workload, which made their hearts resent Murong Yu very much. On this day, he finally got a day off and wanted to go outside to find a brothel girl to vent his anger. Just when he was at the gate, he met Murong Yu, who had disappeared for a few days. Seeing Murong Yu, Murong's anger rose from the side of his heart. He opened his mouth and viciously cursed. Then he ran over and kicked him. He was already accustomed to this kind of thing. In the Murong clan, Murong Yu, this waste was not only a waste but also a good-for-nothing. A waste that could be bullied by anyone. Even if he was a branch descendant of the Murong clan, a foreign servant like Murong, and could bully him at will. Because Murong was a martial artist of the first sky of the Hotian realm. In this world, martial artists were absolutely above the waste that couldn't cultivate. Hearing Murong and once again scolding him as a dog bastard, Murong Yu's eyes instantly became red. In this world, no one was good to him, except for his parents. Although his parents died early, they were definitely Murong Yu's reverse scale. The world could insult Murong Yu, but they absolutely couldn't insult his parents. In the past, Murong Yu was a real waste. He was scolded as a dog bastard, a bastard, and so on all day long. Although he was angry, he endured. It wasn't that he didn't resist, but when he resisted, he would be beaten even more fiercely. Since his parents died when he was 5 years old, he had completely degenerated into a person who could be bullied. In the beginning, when those people scolded him as a bastard, Murong Yu would recklessly rush up and fight with his life on the line. However, the result of doing so was that he was beaten half dead. There was even one time when he was beaten to the point that he couldn't get out of bed for half a year. Since that time, Murong Yu chose to endure. He had to endure. In his heart, he remembered each and every person who bullied him. These people, he would take revenge on them. Today, Murong Yu was no longer a waste. He was a martial artist. Hearing Murong's resentful scolding him again, wanting to punch and kick him. These years, the resentment that had been suppressed in the depths of Murong Yu's heart finally broke out. Chapter 13. His eyes were red, and his face was ferocious as he looked at Murong. He gnashed his teeth and looked as if he was about to devour Murong. Frightened by Murong Yu's murderous look, Murong involuntarily wanted to withdraw his foot. However, he immediately reacted, "He's just a piece of trash. Why should I be afraid of him? Damn it, I was actually frightened by this piece of trash." After reacting, Murong became even angrier. He exerted his strength and kicked Murong Yu's chest fiercely. During this process, a faint flood dragon appeared above Murong's head. A warrior at the first sky of the acquired realm. He actually used the power of a warrior. This was clearly putting him to death. Murong Yu's face became more and more ferocious. "You're going to die." All of a sudden, Murong Yu let out a roar. He clenched his right hand and ruthlessly smashed his fist towards Murong's kick. Seeing the crazy Murong Yu, Murong could only sneer in his heart. How could a piece of trash like him withstand the attack of a warrior? Even to the extent that Murong's mind was already filled with the scene of Murong Yu's chest collapsing and him vomiting blood after being kicked by him. Thinking of this, Murong's mouth could not help but reveal a cruel smile. However, as soon as the smile appeared, it instantly froze. Then his face revealed an expression as if he had seen a ghost. The power of 2 dragons. Impossible, Murong's roared, because at this time, he clearly saw 2 black flood dragons floating above Murong Yu's head, almost condensing into a substance. Bang! At the same time as Murong's roar, Murong Yu's fist carried a terrifying force and fiercely bombarded Murong's calf. The power of 2 dragons against the power of 1 dragon. Absolute suppression of strength. Crack! The crisp sound of bone breaking came from Murong's calf, followed by Murong's incomparably mournful scream. Bang! Under the impact of the powerful force, Murong was violently sent flying. Finally, he landed on the snowy ground in the distance. Then, Murong's screams that sounded like a pig being slaughtered spread far and wide. What's going on? Hearing Murong's screams, the servants who were working nearby came over. After sending Murong Yu flying with a punch, Murong Yu did not calm down. On the contrary, the grudge that he had been suppressing for many years exploded. His eyes were red, and his body was full of murderous intent. He walked step by step toward Murong. Seeing Murong Yu's terrifying appearance, Murong was terrified. He endured the pain of his broken leg and shouted angrily, "You son of a bitch, how dare you break my leg? You're courting death. I'll definitely kill you." Murong was like a mad dog, cursing Murong Yu with incomparable resentment. Trash! Murong Yu slowly walked to Murong. His face was cold, and he looked at Murong with murderous intent. Then he stepped on it. Crack! The crisp sound of bone breaking was accompanied by Murong's screams. Murong's other foot was also broken by Murong Yu. "Didn't you have fun bullying me?" Murong Yu grinned and kicked Murong's waist fiercely. The huge force kicked Murong into the air. His feet were broken, and his waist was kicked fiercely. The huge pain directly made Murong spit out a big mouthful of blood, and then he fainted. With a bang, Murong fell from the sky and landed on the ground. The huge impact immediately woke up the unconscious Murong, and then Murong let out another blood-curdling scream. "Save me! Save me! Murong Yu, this son of a bitch, is crazy." At this time, Murong's house was surrounded by many servants. However, when they saw the scene of Murong Yu violently beating Murong, their jaws dropped to the ground. Wasn't Murong Yu a trash who could be bullied by others? Why was he so fierce today? For a moment, no one reacted, and they just stared blankly at Murong Yu. Murong was beaten so badly by him, but he still scolded him bitterly. Murong Yu's eyes flashed with a touch of hostility. He quickly rushed forward and viciously stomped his foot on Murong's mouth. Crack! The sound of bone breaking spread far away, and the servants nearby who were watching the scene shuddered. Then Murong Yu, who was cursing Murong bitterly, shut up instantly. It was not that he shut up, but his whole jaw was broken by Murong Yu's foot. He had already fainted. Chapter 14. Seeing that Murong had already fainted, Murong Yu didn't seem to feel relieved. He continued to stomp on Murong's 2 hands and broke them. Extremely savage. During this process, Murong was awoken by the pain, but he quickly fainted again. After doing all this, Murong Yu gradually calmed down and returned to his usual appearance. He calmly swept a glance at the dozens of servants who were watching the show, and then slowly left the place. Seeing Murong Yu so savage, these servants had long been subdued. When they saw Murong Yu walking over, they couldn't help but step aside with faces full of fear. This world was just so realistic. When you were a waste, these servants might rush up to hit you when you were down and trample on you a few times for fun. When you were more savage than them, more powerful than them, they would shrink to the side and not dare to utter a word. They would only look at you in fear. From the beginning to the end, these servants didn't dare to speak. Only when they saw Murong Yu's figure disappear into the distance did these servants start to discuss. The news of Murong Yu's return and how he savagely crippled Murong quickly spread. Of course, in the entire huge Murong clan, the news of his return was only limited to his circle, the low-level servants. The Imperial Horse Directorate was a special courtyard in the Murong clan. It was located in a corner of the Murong clan. The so-called Imperial Horse Directorate was the place where the Murong clan managed their mounts and strange beasts. In a small courtyard, strange beasts gathered together. After ruthlessly beating up Murong Yu's accumulated resentment for many years was slightly vented, and his mood was a bit better. He could only be seen walking towards the Imperial Horse Directorate. On the way, the servants who saw him all pointed at him and whispered. However, Murong Yu had long been accustomed to it, and acted as if he didn't see it. Whoosh! Murong Yu had just stepped into the Imperial Horse Directorate when a gust of wind carrying a fierce, murderous intent hit him in the face. If it was in the past, Murong Yu wouldn't have been able to detect it, let alone block it. However, at this time, Murong Yu was already a martial artist, and his spiritual sense was very sharp. Taking a wrong step, Murong Yu's figure swayed, and he took a step back. Pa! After a crisp sound, a long black whip fiercely lashed at the ground where Murong Yu originally stood. A powerful force burst out, and the nearby snow was blown away. Murong Yu's eyes flashed with a cold light when he saw the whip. Murong Hong cried out in surprise when he saw that Murong Yu had actually dodged his attack. Immediately after, a figure appeared in front of Murong Yu. This was a skinny middle-aged man with a pair of narrow eyes that flickered with a malicious light. His nose was deeply indented, and his face was full of pockmarks. On his face was a long, hideous scar that stretched from the right side of his forehead to the left side of his chin. It was as if someone had struck him from the right side to the left. It was extremely ferocious. Murong Hong, the head of the Imperial Horse Directorate. He was in charge of the entire Imperial Horse Directorate, and he had some power in his hands. However, this guy was too vicious, and he wasn't popular in the Imperial Horse Directorate. His only pleasure was to torture Murong Yu. Murong Yu's eyes flashed coldly. Ever since he had entered the Imperial Horse Directorate, he had been constantly bullied by Murong Hong. He couldn't eat enough, sleep well, and even the pitiful few copper coins in his monthly salary had been deducted by this bastard. You son of a bitch, you actually disappeared for 3 days. You actually dared to dodge my whip? I'll whip you to death. Murong Hong was only surprised for a moment, and then he was furious. With a flip of his hand, the long black whip in his hand was like a black snake, and it lashed out at Murong Yu. You're courting death. Murong Yu's eyes flashed with a cold, murderous intent. This time, he didn't retreat. Instead, he took a step forward. Then he stretched out his hand and grabbed the long black whip. Seeing this, Murong Hong's eyes flashed with ruthlessness. Channeling his power, the long black whip suddenly sped up and lashed out fiercely. Poof! Poof! The whip was extremely fast, and it contained a powerful force. It even caused the air to explode. Chapter 15. Murong Yu's eyes were filled with murderous intent. If it had been before, Murong Hong's whip would have shattered his arm, even if it hadn't been broken on the spot. And Murong Hong clearly wanted to break Murong Yu's arm. In any case, Murong Yu was just a good-for-nothing. Even if he killed him, he would at most be punished by the higher-ups. Puff! But what surprised Murong Hong was that the long whip that he could have broken Murong Yu's arm was now in Murong Yu's hand. Murong Hong was shocked. He exerted force in his hand, trying to pull the long whip back. But the long black whip didn't move an inch. This made Murong Hong even more shocked. In just 3 days, Murong Yu not only dared to resist, but also had such powerful strength. Murong Yu, that good-for-nothing, actually came back. In just 3 days, he actually dared to resist. The Imperial Horse Directorate wasn't big. Murong Hong's roar had already attracted the attention of the few servants in the Imperial Horse Directorate. Does this good-for-nothing want to die? He actually dared to resist. I think this time, even if he doesn't die, he'll lose a layer of skin. A servant gloated. Let's see how Sir kills him. Another servant approached excitedly. Humph! A good-for-nothing will always be a good-for-nothing. Today I'll kill you. Murong Hong was furious. His body trembled, and suddenly 2 faint shadows of flood dragons appeared above his head. The strength of 2 dragons, the second sky of the Hotian realm. Murong Hong had already used the strength of a warrior. He grinned maliciously and was about to kill Murong Yu. However, at this moment, he was shocked to discover that 2 black dragons had appeared above Murong Yu's head at some point in time. They were vivid and lifelike, as if they were real. They were much more solid than his 2 faint shadows. The strength of 2 dragons. Murong Yu, that good-for-nothing, has reached the second sky of the Hotian realm? How is that possible? Seeing the 2 black flood dragons above Murong Yu's head, the 7 or 8 servants were shocked. Each and every one of them looked at Murong Yu with incredulous gazes. This look shocked Murong Hong to the point that he was endlessly alarmed in his heart. Because, as long as one wasn't a fool, one could see that although both of them had the strength of 2 dragons, Murong Yu's was much stronger. Dragon Elephant Prajna Technique. Murong Yu roared in his heart. At this moment, something that caused Murong Hong to be alarmed happened. In addition to the 2 flood dragons above his head, 2 shadows of dragons and elephant at his shadow. Murong Yu's hand shook, causing Murong Hong to suffer a heavy blow. In that instant, his skinny figure involuntarily pounced towards Murong Yu. At this time, Murong Yu's other hand, still carrying the shadows of dragons and elephants, fiercely bombarded Murong Hong's chest. Crack! In front of absolute power, Murong Hong still hadn't recovered from the shock. Murong Yu's fist bombarded his chest fiercely. After the crisp sound of bones breaking, Murong Hong's chest immediately caved in. Bright red blood flowed out of Murong Hong's mouth like a fountain. Murong Hong was shocked and angry. Coupled with the sharp pain in his chest, his face became more and more ferocious. But he stared at Murong Yu with incomparable resentment. Murong Yu's heart was filled with anger. This bastard was beaten half to death by him, but he still looked at him with such hatred. Murong Yu's heart was filled with anger. With a cold snort, he took a step forward, directly stepping on Murong Hong's face. Murong Hong let out a blood-curdling scream like a pig being slaughtered, accompanied by the crisp sound of bones breaking. It was likely that half of his face had been crushed by Murong Yu. Murong Yu snorted coldly and walked towards the Imperial Horse Directorate without looking back. The servants of the Imperial Horse Directorate jumped in fright when they saw Murong Yu, who looked like a death god, walk in. It must be known that they had bullied Murong Yu many times. Even Murong Hong, a warrior of the second layer of the Hotian realm, wasn't a match for Murong Yu. How could they, who were only at the first layer of the Hotian realm, be a match for him? All of them slowly retreated, their faces filled with horror. They didn't even dare to look directly at Murong Yu. At this time, Murong Yu's footsteps paused. Everyone's hearts skipped a beat. They were almost scared to death. They were afraid that Murong Yu would fly over and beat them up, leaving them half dead. Carry that trash to the woodshed. Don't let him die, Murong Yu said coldly, and then walked towards the largest room in the Imperial Horse Directorate. This room was Murong Hong's room. Now was clearly occupied by Murong Yu. Murong Hong was thrown into the woodshed, Murong Yu's previous room. Chapter 16. Seeing that Murong Yu didn't cause any trouble for them, the servants secretly heaved a sigh of relief. However, all of them had worried looks on their faces. My lord, not long after Murong Yu entered the room, there was a knock on the door. Murong Yu frowned slightly, and a look of displeasure appeared on his face. He had already beaten Murong Hong to such a state. What else did these people want to do to him? Murong Yu opened the door with a gloomy face. He saw that the 8 servants of the Imperial Horse Directorate were all gathered here. Originally, there were 10 servants in the Imperial Horse Directorate. Murong Yu was one of them, and the other was Murong An, who had been beaten to a pulp by him. What do you want? Murong Yu asked with a gloomy face. The 8 servants were already nervous to begin with, and now they were even more uneasy. Seeing that they weren't speaking, Murong Yu became even more impatient. Just as he was about to order them to leave, a servant called Murong Qing spoke up. "My lord, you are a magnanimous person. We used to look down on you and offended you. We hope that you won't take offense. In the future, we will serve you wholeheartedly. Yes, we were blind and offended you. We hope that you won't take offense." After Murong Qing spoke up, the other 8 servants also spoke up. Murong Yu sneered in his heart. These people had bullied him many times in the past, but now that he had become powerful, they immediately came to him to seek refuge. "The Imperial Horse Directorate's supervisor is not for me to decide. If there's nothing else, you can leave." "Right, I want this room now. Do you have any problems with that?" "Of course. If you have any orders in the future, we will do our best to help you," Murong Qing continued. Then he left with the others. Murong Yu sneered in his heart. He closed the door and sat cross-legged on the bed, thinking about what had happened in the past few days. Even now, he still felt that it was as unreal as a dream. He had turned from a good-for-nothing into a martial artist, crippled Murong Un and Murong Hong, intimidated the servants of the Imperial Horse Directorate. Everything was related to Hichu Luoshu. That's right, I clearly cultivated in Hichu Luoshu for 6 days. Why did they say that only 3 days have passed? Let's ask Hichu. Murong Yu was puzzled. With a thought, he entered the Hichu Luoshu world. Hichu Luoshu was a world of its own. After Murong Yu recognized Hichu Luoshu as his master, he could enter and exit Hichu Luoshu with just a thought. Moreover, after recognizing Hichu Luoshu as his master, Hichu Luoshu was attached to Murong Yu's chest. If someone had seen Murong Yu's chest before, they would have seen a tattoo on his chest that looked like the painting of rivers and mountains. It was Hichu Luoshu. At this time, when Murong Yu entered the Hichu Luoshu world, Hichu Luoshu floated out of Murong Yu's body and turned into a speck of dust that was invisible to the naked eye, landing on the table in the room. The Hichu Luoshu world can accelerate time twice as fast as the outside world. Therefore, 6 days have passed here, but only 3 days have passed outside. When Murong Yu asked his question, Hichu directly said, "In fact, Murong Yu had been outside for 4 days. Because on the first day, they left with Murong Ling and others, but they did not come back with them. Therefore, Murong Hong and others said that he disappeared for 3 days. Time acceleration. After hearing Hichu's words, Murong Yu was pleasantly surprised. In other words, I now have twice as much time as the outside world. They cultivate for a day, but I have actually cultivated for 2 days. Murong Yu was shocked, but more than that, he was excited. He was already 16 years old this year. Compared to others who started practicing martial arts at the age of 5 or 6, he was 10 years slower. Moreover, people who practiced martial arts knew that it was best to start practicing martial arts before the age of 5 to 10. At the stage where Murong Yu was 16 years old, he was already considered old. Bones, meridians, and so on are basically fixed. Even if they started practicing at this time, they were destined to have no great achievements. However, as long as Murong Yu had twice as much time as others, he believed that he could also achieve something. Time acceleration is just the most basic ability of Hichu Luoshu. In addition, Hichu Luoshu has many magical powers and abilities. However, these need to be slowly explored by yourself. Hichu said indifferently, "I'll simply tell you, in the Hichu Luoshu world, as long as you have the ability, you can also accelerate time. You can even accelerate billions of years in an instant." Hichu said indifferently. Chapter 17. Billions of years in an instant. In other words, only a moment had passed outside, but billions of years had passed inside the Hichu Luoshu world. It was too terrifying. What conditions do I need to accelerate time by billions of times? Murong Yu asked excitedly. Hichu glanced at Murong Yu indifferently and said without mercy, "Don't even think about it. You don't even have the conditions to accelerate time by 3 times. Moreover, accelerating time won't do you any good. You don't have enough lifespan, so you'll die of old age here. Morong was silent. Hichu was telling the truth. In this world, ordinary people could only live up to 100 years old. Experts at the peak of the post-liminary realm had a lifespan of 200 years. After reaching the post-liminary realm, their lifespan would increase to 500 years. According to Morong's current physique, it was still a question whether he had 70 or 80 years of lifespan. If time was accelerated by billions of times, he would die of old age in an instant. Moreover, even if Hichu didn't say it, Morong knew that the conditions to accelerate time must be very terrifying. I'm going to cultivate. Morong smiled embarrassedly and began to cultivate at the side. The dragon-elephant prajna technique was an extremely powerful combat technique. With a punch, accompanied by dragon and elephant vision, when cultivated to the extreme, breaking stones, moving mountains, and leveling the ground were all trivial matters. It could even shatter heaven and earth. Of course, these were all what Hichu said. Morong had only cultivated the first stage, so his strength was limited. However, although the dragon-elephant prajna technique was a combat technique, it didn't have any moves. It was purely based on physical strength to tear heaven and earth. After cultivating the dragon-elephant prajna technique for a while, Morong switched to cultivating the chaotic celestial records. This was his main cultivation technique. After cultivating for a day, the black flood dragon above Morong's head became more condensed, almost materializing. Morong knew that he was about to step into the second sky of the post-liminary realm. In the Great Xia dynasty, or the entire secular world, post-liminary experts were the most powerful. As for post-liminary realm experts, they were a dime a dozen. Even the ordinary soldiers in the dynasty's army were at the Hotian 5th or 6th stage. However, although this world valued martial arts, there were not many truly strong people. The vast majority of martial artists were stuck in the Hotian realm for the rest of their lives. However, for clans like the Morong clan, there were many Xiantian experts. Moreover, the disciples of these warrior families had an advantage in terms of cultivation. There was a systematic cultivation method, and there was also guidance from an expert. Just like Morong Yin, who had reached the Hotian 6th heavenly layer at the age of 15. And Morong Ling, who was only 17 years old, had already reached the Hotian 8th level. It was very likely that he would reach the Xiantian realm before the age of 20. He was definitely a genius. At dawn, Morong opened the door and went out. As soon as he opened the door, he was shocked. Those 8 servants of the Imperial Horse Directorate were actually standing at the door in an orderly manner, as if they had been waiting for Morong to appear. Ever since Morong Hong had been crippled by Morong, these servants were afraid of Morong's despotic power. They did not dare to offend Morong and wanted to curry favor with Morong. And today, they had prepared breakfast and were waiting for Morong to wake up. Morong's face exposed a trace of a strange smile. This kind of treatment was previously only given to that waste Morong Hong, and he himself had only beaten up Morong Hong. In this world, whoever had the biggest fist was the master. However, Morong would also not refuse their flattery. After eating breakfast, Morong instructed them to look after the Imperial Horse Directorate. He then leisurely left this place and walked towards the Morong clan's martial arts practice field. Regardless of whether it was cold or hot, every morning, the younger generation of the Morong clan's children would gather at the martial arts practice field to train. This was one of the homework that every martial artist clan had to do every day. Heavy snow swirled in the air, but the martial arts practice field was in full swing. Close to 200 children of the Morong clan had gathered at the martial arts practice field and were happily training. The youngest was only 5 or 6 years old, and the oldest was like Morong who was 16 or 17 years old. However, geniuses like Morong Ling did not need to come here to train. It could be said that these people who were training at the martial arts practice field, if they were not new to martial arts, then they did not have any innate aptitude. Not far from the side of the martial arts practice field, there was a huge rock. Morong came to the front of the huge rock with ease. With his back against the huge rock, he looked at the people training at the martial arts practice field. Before this, whenever Morong had free time, he would come here to watch these people train. However, he could only watch and envy them in his heart, because he was simply unable to train. Originally, when Morong stood here before, he could not help but have thoughts of envy rise in his heart. However, today when he saw these people train, Morong's heart did not have this kind of feeling. Just as he was wondering what was going on, he laughed at himself. He could also be considered a martial artist now. The cultivation method that he trained in was the best in this world, and he even had the guidance of Hichu, the best tool spirit. Apart from his cultivation, which was still not strong, he was stronger than these people in everything. Chapter 18. After watching for a while, Morong lost interest and turned around to leave. I'll go to the scripture pavilion to see if there are any suitable martial skills. Pung! Just as Morong turned around, he bumped into something. Immediately, a powerful force surged forth, pushing Morong back a few steps. Yo, isn't this the trash, Morong? Have you come to watch others practice again? After watching for so many years, I don't know if you've learned it or not. A strange voice came from the front, immediately attracting a burst of laughter. Morong's face was dull as he looked over. In front of him stood 5 people. The person who had just spoken was called Morong Ping, one of the direct descendants of the Morong clan. Although he was only 15 years old, he had already reached the 4th sky of the Hotian realm. Although he couldn't be considered a genius, he was still a lot stronger than Morong, this trash who couldn't practice martial arts. Morong secretly cursed his bad luck in his heart. He had met this idiot again. In fact, as long as he was in the Morong clan, anyone could bully and humiliate Morong. Who made him a trash? As long as it was a person, they could trample him under their feet. Seeing the unlucky appearance on Morong's face, Morong Ping suddenly became furious. His eyes flashed with an ominous glint, and he was about to make a move against Morong. In fact, he had just seen Morong here, so he had deliberately walked over to bully this legendary trash. This kind of thing he had to repeat almost every day. Morong Ping, if you don't want to die, then immediately roll over here. Just as Morong Ping was about to beat Morong, a thunderous voice came from the martial arts practice field. Morong Ping was startled. His neck shrunk, and then he fiercely looked at Morong. I'll settle this with you next time. As he spoke, he brought the other 4 people and quickly ran towards the martial arts practice field. Morong's eyes flickered. Just now, he really had the impulse to leave Morong Ping. Only, Morong Ping wasn't Morong Hong and the others. His strength was much higher than Morong's. He wasn't Morong Ping's opponent. My strength is still not enough. Morong sighed, dispirited, and walked back to the Imperial Directorate. He didn't even bother to go to the scripture pavilion. I need to increase my strength first. Otherwise, it will still be difficult for me to move around the Morong family. For the rest of the day, Morong didn't leave the Imperial Horse Directorate. It was only here that he had a short period of peace and quiet. During this process, he had been cultivating in the He-Tu and Luo Shu worlds. Boom! Morong loudly shouted, and a fist blasted out, blasting a big hole in the ground. Above his head, 5 black flood dragons were floating, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. The strength of 5 dragons. Possessing the strength of 5 dragons, that was the 3rd Hotian layer. However, perhaps because Morong's physique was different from ordinary people's, he had just broken through to the 2nd Hotian layer. The 2nd Hotian layer had the strength of 5 dragons. Perhaps the strength of 5 dragons couldn't even withstand a single blow. In this world, there were a lot of people with the strength of dozens of dragons. However, Morong was only at the 2nd Hotian layer. Even in this world, there was no one who possessed the power of 5 dragons at the 2nd sky of the Hotian realm. Morong naturally knew that he was different from others. He was much stronger than people in the same realm. Therefore, After he finished cultivating, he was happy to leave the Hichu Luoshu world. It's just the strength of 5 dragons, and you like to be like this. It's hard to achieve anything great. Just as Murong Yu was about to leave, Hichu's disdainful voice passed into Murong Yu's ears. Murong Yu rolled his eyes. Reaching the second Hodian layer in less than half a month. This progress is not bad, right? Slow. Too slow. It's not that I look down on you, but if it were me, I would have already reached the 9th Hotian layer in half a month. Murong Yu was simply speechless. If it was really as Hichu said, this world would already be full of Xiantian masters. In fact, there weren't that many Xiantian masters. Even Murong family's genius-level Murong Ling reached the 8th Hotian layer at the age of 17. He was also a rare genius in this world. However, Murong Ling had already cultivated for more than 10 years. In comparison, Murong Yu had only cultivated for less than half a month. This kind of disparity was very big. In the following time, Murong Yu didn't leave the Imperial Horse Directorate. In any case, in this cold winter season, the Murong family didn't have any activities that required mounts. Murong Yu's return was unexpectedly not discovered by Murong Ling and the others. Perhaps Murong Ling had already thought that Murong Yu had died under the cliff. Or maybe they simply didn't care. Because of Murong Yu's strong suppression, the servants in the Imperial Horse Directorate consciously completed everything that they should do every day. And that Murong and Murong Hong, who were beaten half to death by Murong Yu, were indeed thrown into a room to recuperate. Chapter 19. For the Murong clan, as long as it wasn't a big deal, they would generally ignore the fights between the servants. After all, even if they fought fiercely, they were only servants and couldn't raise any waves. As long as it didn't endanger the interests of the Murong clan, it was fine. During this time, Murong Yu spent almost all his time cultivating in the Hichu Luoshu world. Apart from cultivating the primal chaos heavenly record, he only cultivated the dragon-elephant prajna technique. As for the other cultivation techniques, according to Murong Yu's original intention, he wanted to go to the Murong clan's scripture pavilion to take a look. But after being attacked by Hichu, he was too lazy to go. Hichu only said one sentence. These secular martial skills are simply dregs. Even if you cultivate them, they're just trash and useless. At that time, Murong Yu was shocked. The Murong clan was one of the big clans in the Xia dynasty. The martial skills inside were extremely powerful. But when it came to Hichu's mouth, the martial skills that they were proud of all became trash. Of course, compared to the Hichu Luoshu, the #1 book in the world, most of the cultivation techniques were trash. Not only in the secular world, even in the cultivation world and the immortal world, it was the same. On the 10th day, after Murong Yu returned from the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. In the Hichu Luoshu world, after a burst of loud noise, Murong Yu's front was a mess. Above his head, 60 black flood dragons circled around him, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws, growling. As long as Murong Yu was willing, these 60 flood dragons would directly rush over without hesitation and tear the opponent apart. 60 dragon power. At the Hotian 7th heavenly layer, one could have 50 dragon power. And at the 8th heavenly layer, one strength would soar to 70 dragon power. 60 dragon power was between the Hotian 7th heavenly layer and the Hotian 8th heavenly layer. In fact, the dragon power between each realm was not fixed. For example, at the Hotian 7th heavenly layer, it was generally between 50 and 60 dragon power. Normally, cultivators would have 50 dragon power after breaking through. It was also the lowest value of the dragon's power in that realm. However, there were some people who, after making a breakthrough, possessed 51 dragon strength or even more. For example, a genius like Murong Ling, who was at the 8th level of the acquired realm. Generally speaking, this realm only had 70 dragon power. However, Murong's rise had reached 80 dragon power. They were genius-level existences. Of course, there were some geniuses who were even more heaven-defying than Murong. When they were at the 8th Hoteon stage, they could reach 89 dragon powers, which was the peak of this realm. Of course, such geniuses were extremely rare. Even in the entire world, there were only a few of them. Cultivating for nearly a month before breaking through to the Hoteon 5th layer, you are too slow. Looking at Murong Yu's happy face, Hichu could not help but shake his head and say, "The 5th layer of the Hoteon realm, 60 dragons of strength." Generally speaking, the 5th heaven of the Hoteon realm only had 20 dragons of strength, and the peak was 29 dragons of strength. However, Murong Yu actually possessed 60 dragons of strength. The 5th layer of the Hoteon realm had the strength of the 7th layer of the Hoteon realm. Murong Yu's battle strength was heaven-defying. However, what was even more heaven-defying than his battle strength was his cultivation speed. In 10 days, even if time was accelerated, he had grown from a trash who could not practice martial arts to the 5th layer of the Hoteon realm in 20 days. If outsiders knew about such a shocking cultivation speed, Murong Yu would immediately become the most monstrous genius and would be the target of countless families to rope him in. However, he did not know if it had something to do with Hichu, but Murong Yu did not think about this at all. After all, the chaotic celestial records he was now cultivating was one of the most powerful techniques in the world, and he also had a peerless treasure like Hichu Luoshu. What else did he need? He didn't need anything anymore. 60 dragons of strength, in addition to the addition of the dragon elephant Prajna art. Even if Murong were to surpass me, I would still have the strength to fight. Murong Yu's eyes flickered with a radiant light as he left the Hichu Luoshu world, and then directly left the Imperial Horse Directorate. In the previous period of time, although Murong Yu's battle strength had been constantly increasing, he had never left the Imperial Horse Directorate. It was not necessarily that he did not have the intention to hide. It was not that he was afraid of those people, but in fact, ever since he was able to practice martial arts, he had already decided not to be bullied by anyone. Who dares to bully me? I will beat you to the ground with one punch. However, the Murong clan was after all a large clan. Those servants were still okay, as their strength was not strong. However, if you were to encounter those aristocratic children, with Murong Yu's previous strength, it was simply not enough to look at. But now he had 60 dragons of strength, and in the younger generation of the Murong clan, he could be considered a powerhouse. Seeing Murong Yu swagger out of the Imperial Horse Directorate, Hichu could not help but sneer and say, "Kid, aren't you afraid of encountering Murong and being beaten to the ground by him?" Chapter 20. Murong Yu only sneered. Before, I couldn't practice martial arts and was only a waste. I could only tolerate their bullying. But now, I don't need to tolerate their insults and bullying. I will return them all tenfold. What is mine, I will take it back. Even if it is useless to me, I will throw it away. It is better than giving it to those dregs. Speaking until here, Murong Yu's eyes flashed with a cold light. He was also a branch descendant of the Murong clan, but he couldn't even compare to the lowest level servant. How could he not hate? As for those so-called cultivation geniuses, I, Murong Yu, will trample them one by one under my feet. While speaking, Murong Yu's mind constantly flashed with those who had bullied him. Although Murong Yu was a waste before, unable to practice martial arts, his memory was very good. However, his memory was surprisingly good. Those who had bullied him were all deeply imprinted in his memory. Murong Yu's mood was very bad today, because in the morning he had been defeated by a person of the same realm from the Su clan. This made Murong Yu very angry. He thought that his martial arts were not good enough. After returning to Murong's house, he quickly went to the Hidden Scriptures Pavilion with a few henchmen. He wanted to find a powerful martial arts book in the Hidden Scriptures Pavilion. After all, he was about to enter the Hoteon 6th layer. As long as he found a powerful martial arts book and practiced it, he could defeat that guy from the Su clan and take revenge for today's enmity. Just as Murong Yu was about to enter the Hidden Scriptures Pavilion, he was bumped into by someone. Originally, Murong Yu's mood was extremely bad. Immediately, he exploded. He turned his head and looked over in anger. "Sorry, That person who bumped into Murong Yu only said sorry. He didn't have any intention of stopping and was about to enter the hidden scriptures pavilion. Murong Yu, you waste. You are courting death. When he saw that the person who bumped into him was actually the famous waste, Murong Yu's anger in his heart was even worse. Motherf asterisk her, even this trash dares to bump into me. Today, I will definitely beat you to death. Murong Ji shouted angrily. His big hand suddenly reached out and grabbed the back of Murong Yu's neck. His speed was extremely fast. Just as he was about to grab Murong Yu's nape, Murong Yu suddenly disappeared. Murong Ji's attack missed. His body swayed, and he took a few steps forward. He almost fell to the ground. This made Murong Ji even angrier. Murong Yu dodged Murong Ji's attack. His face was cold as he stood to the side. He coldly looked at Murong Ji and said, Murong Ji, what are you doing? I only touched you, and you want to kill me? You bastard! How dare you act so self-righteous after bumping into me? Today, see if I don't beat you to death. Murong Ji was furious. He took a step forward and ruthlessly slapped Murong Yu's face. In the process of fighting, 20 flood dragons appeared above Murong Ji's head. 20 dragon strengths. If it were the Murong Yu of the past, that slap would have killed him on the spot. Murong Yu naturally felt Murong Ji's monstrous killing intent towards him. You are courting death. Murong Yu flew into a rage. He took a step forward, his eyes filled with killing intent. Chapter 21. For more than 10 years, Murong Yu had always had one thing that he couldn't understand. Why did the entire Murong family not like him? Even though servants could bully him as they wished, Murong Yu didn't think he was bad-looking. Although he wasn't handsome, he was quite a delicate person with a good temper. But why was it like this? Was it just because he was a trash that couldn't practice martial arts? Well, Murong Yu admitted that he was indeed one of the trash that couldn't practice martial arts in this world. Moreover, there weren't many of these trash. This thought suddenly flashed through his mind, but he didn't stop Murong Yu's movements. Seeing Murong Ji's murderous fist coming at him, Murong Yu just sneered and fiercely punched Murong Ji's fist. Murong Ji only had 20 dragon strength. Although his realm was the same as Murong Yu's 60 dragon strength directly suppressed him. Kacha! Murong Ji screamed. Under the suppression of absolute power, his 20 dragon strength couldn't withstand a single blow. At the moment when the two fists collided, his fist was immediately smashed into smithereens. Then, a tyrannical aura poured from his shattered fist into his arm. Kacha! Kacha! The crisp sound of bones breaking continuously rang out. Murong Ji's right hand was twisted like a fried dough twist. Obviously, all the bones in his hand were broken. Under the impact of the powerful force, Murong Ji screamed and flew out. During this process, Murong Yu took a step forward and slapped Murong Ji's face, immediately sending Murong Ji flying. Puff! Murong Ji opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with a few teeth, then fell to the ground. His eyes rolled back and then he fainted. Seeing that Murong Ji had fainted on the ground, the people nearby finally reacted. They all looked at Murong Yu in shock. They didn't know when Murong Yu had gained such power. One should know that Murong Ji was a Hoteon 5th layer martial artist. Young Master Murong has fainted. Damn it, you trash, you actually dared to hit young Master Murong. You're really courting death. When they saw that Murong Ji had fainted, the two lackeys beside him glared at Murong Yu with resentment and cursed him endlessly. You actually injured young Master Murong. You're dead meat. Young Master Murong will definitely kill you. Murong Yu narrowed his eyes as he looked at the two lackeys who were happily scolding him. These two trash who bullied him a lot in the past. In for a penny, in for a pound, Murong Yu took a step forward and arrived in front of the two lackeys in an instant. Then he struck out with his big hands. Bang! Bang! Almost at the same time, the two bastards who bullied young Master issued a blood-curdling scream at the same time. Then they were directly sent flying high into the air. After two loud, muffled sounds, The two lackeys fiercely hit a wall. Their heads were broken and their bones were broken. They probably wouldn't survive. Go back and tell Morongji how to quickly carry this trash back. Otherwise, if he dies, it's not my fault. Morongyu clapped his hands and glanced at the still shocked crowd. Then, he slowly entered the hidden scriptures pavilion. Morongji Hao, 19 years old, was the #1 genius of the Morong family. He had the strength of the Hotian ninth layer. It was said that when he was 17 years old, he had already stepped into the Hotian ninth layer. He had stagnated at the peak of the Hotian ninth layer for 2 years. Some people said that he had already stepped into the Xiantian realm. A 19-year-old Xiantian expert. Even in the entire Great Xia dynasty, or even in the entire Huaxiao world, he was a first-class genius. At this time, Morongji Hao had just finished cultivating in his room. At this time, a figure quickly rushed into the room. Morongji Hao was furious. What he hated most in his life was people who trespassed into other people's rooms. Moreover, this person was a servant of the Morong family. When Morongji Hao was about to teach this unruly servant a lesson, the servant knelt down in front of Morongji Hao with a plop. Master Ji Hao, Master Hao is dying. Hurry and save him. Morongji Hao's face suddenly changed. He waved his hand and immediately grabbed Morongji Hao. He looked at Morongji Hao with an angry face and roared. What did you say? Ji Hao is dying? Yes, Master Ji Hao was defeated by Morongyu. His life is in danger. Morongji Hao took a deep breath and then said. Morongji Hao flew into a rage. He fiercely threw Morongji Hao out, and then his body flashed and disappeared. He dashed towards the scripture pavilion as fast as he could. Not long after, Morongji Hao rushed to the front of the sutra pavilion. At this time, there were many people gathered in front of the sutra pavilion. Even the people who were originally in the sutra pavilion came out one after another after hearing about this. They surrounded the area. Ji Hao, seeing Morongji Hao unconscious on the ground, his right hand was badly mangled and lying on the ground. Morong Hao's eyes widened in anger. He roared and pounced forward. He took out a pill from his body and quickly fed it to Morongji Hao. Then he looked at Morongji Hao's injuries. Half of Morongji Hao's face was swollen and half of his teeth had fallen out. These were not the most serious. The most serious was Morongji Hao's right hand. All the bones had been shattered. In other words, Morongji Hao's right hand was already crippled. Unless there were those strong cultivators or pills, Morongji Hao's hand would not be able to recover. However, those immortals in the cultivation world were aloof and remote. Although their Morong clan was powerful, they were not in the eyes of those immortals. Even if the Morong clan had this kind of pill, they would not waste it on Morongji Hao. After checking that Morongji Hao's life was not in danger, but looking at Morongji Hao's crippled right hand, Morongji Hao's eyes burned with anger. Morongyu, get out here! Morongji Hao stood up fiercely. His whole body was filled with murderous aura as he roared. His voice contained endless anger. When did Morongyu, this trash, become so strong? He actually crippled Morongji Hao? A Morong clan's child asked puzzledly. You still don't know? In fact, after Morongyu came back 10 days ago, he suddenly became strong. Now, he crippled a servant, and then he beat the imperial horse supervisor Morong Hong half to death. Aya, when did this trash become so strong? But this guy became so insolent after gaining strength? He even dared to cripple Morongji Hao. After offending Morongji Hao, I'm afraid he won't live for long. Someone said disdainfully. It is said that Morongji Hao has already become a Xiantian expert. Morongyu, this trash, is simply courting death. What's more, Morongji Hao also has a Xiantian father. Let's see how this Morongyu will die. Everyone sneered. Although they were shocked that Morongyu had suddenly become strong, no one sympathized with Morongyu. They all thought that Morongyu would die without a doubt. Morongyu, get out here and die. Morongji Hao walked to the front of the scripture pavilion, but did not enter. Instead, he shouted at the door. All fighting was prohibited in the scripture pavilion. This was the rule of the Murong clan. Even though Murong Ji Hao was the #1 genius of the Murong clan, he did not dare to rush in like this. Murong Yu was wandering in the scripture pavilion, looking for a suitable combat skill to practice. However, he kept hearing Murong Ji Hao's angry roars. He immediately frowned and walked towards the entrance of the scripture pavilion. Where did this mad dog come from? What does he think the scripture pavilion is? Murong Yu slowly walked out. Before he appeared at the door, his voice had already spread far and wide. Boom! After hearing Murong Yu's words, the people outside the scripture pavilion could not help but laugh. Murong Yu actually said that Murong Ji Hao, the #1 genius, was a mad dog. This was probably the first time someone dared to insult Murong Ji Hao like this. Murong Ji Hao was furious. He turned his head and coldly glanced at the people behind him. When these people were swept by his gaze, their laughter suddenly stopped. They could not help but shiver. How could they dare to offend Murong Ji Hao? Even if they were all children of the Murong clan, Murong Ji Hao could easily kill them. So it's you? I thought it was some mad dog that ran into the Murong family. Why did you call me out? Murong Yu approached the scripture pavilion with a smile on his face. He looked at Murong Ji Hao and said indifferently. Murong Ji Hao's eyes flashed with killing intent as he looked at Murong Yu. Are you the one who injured Ji Hao? It's just a dog. So what if I injured it? Murong Yu disdained. How dare you touch Murong Ji Hao's younger brother? You're courting death. Murong Ji Hao shouted angrily. His body flashed, and his big hands formed into claws. He viciously grabbed at Murong Yu's neck. Murong Yu sneered. With a flash of his figure, he took a step back and entered the scripture depository pavilion. Then he shouted, Murong Ji Hao, you dare to fight in the scripture pavilion? Murong Ji Hao immediately stopped his attack. He only looked at Murong Yu with killing intent. Trash, you dare to come out and fight with me? I see. I thought he was powerful. It turns out he wanted to rely on the scripture pavilion's protection. Trash is trash. Does he think he can hide in the scripture pavilion for the rest of his life? Maybe that's his plan. Seeing that Murong Yu did not dare to come out, the surrounding Murong Ji Hao's children sneered. I'm trash. Your brother Murong Ji Hao was crippled by a trash like me. Isn't that worse than a trash like me? If I'm trash, then aren't you and I the best trash? And what are you? The big brother of trash? Or the trash of trash? Murong Yu sneered and continued. You're a master at the peak of the Hotian stage, but you want to fight with a trash like me who can't practice martial arts? You're really not an ordinary trash. Facing Murong Yu's cynicism and the matter of Murong Ji Hao flew into a rage. His killing intent became even sharper. However, he really did not dare to fight in the scripture pavilion. However, his heart was bursting with killing intent. He was thinking about how to kill Murong Yu. Trash is trash. Even if he suddenly has power, he's still trash. He dared to offend Murong Ji Hao. He's really courting death. If he dares to leave the scripture pavilion, he'll be killed by Murong Ji Hao. Chapter 22. I thought he would fight with Murong Hao. So he is still a coward. Brother, do you dare to bet with me on how long Murong Yu, this trash, can live? A Murong clan's disciple was about to bet on the spot. He absolutely cannot live past today, unless he is afraid to come out of the hidden scriptures pavilion. The surrounding people were discussing, but they were very disdainful of Murong Yu. After all, although Murong Yu had defeated Murong Hao, but in their minds he was still just a trash. Murong Yu was sneering in his heart, but on the surface he was very calm and looked at Murong Hao. Murong Hao, Murong clan's #1 genius. Hotian 9th layer, or even a Xianian master, Murong Yu suddenly said. Murong Hao looked at Murong Yu with a murderous look, and a fierce murderous look burst out. He already had the intention to kill Murong Yu. Although I, Murong Yu, am a trash, but I am absolutely not a soft persimmon that can be kneaded. Who bullied me? I remember very clearly in my heart. As for Murong Hao, I just collected some interest from him. How did he treat me before? I did not kill him. He should feel lucky. And you, Morong clan's #1 genius, in my eyes, you are nothing more than this. You don't have to have a murderous look. I know you just want to kill me now. But I'm only at the Hotion 5th layer, and you are at the peak of the Hotion 9th layer, or even at the Xiantian realm. But even if you were at the Xiantian realm, so what? 3 months. As long as I have 3 months, I could defeat you fair and square. Arrogant. Murong Hao's eyes were spitting fire, and he looked at Murong Yu with a murderous look. In his heart, he wished he could slap him to death. Did I hear wrongly? Murong Yu, this trash, actually said that he could defeat Murong Hao in 3 months? The surrounding people were all shocked, and then they all roared with laughter. Murong Yu was a waste, and the entire Murong clan knew about it. How could they hold back their laughter when they heard these words that sounded like something out of a fairy tale? However, they did not know that the current Murong Yu is no longer the useless Murong Yu of the past. I'll give you a chance to kill me fair and square. 3 months from today, I challenge you in the arena. A battle of life and death. You can choose not to accept it, or you can kill me now. I'm indeed no match for you right now. But 3 months later, I will ruthlessly trample you, the #1 genius, under my feet. At this moment, Murong Hao calmed down in a rare moment. However, his eyes were filled with killing intent. Very good. 3 months from today, it will be the time of your death. Before his voice fell, Murong Hao turned around and picked up Murong Ji and disappeared from everyone's line of sight. Murong Hao had actually accepted Murong Yu's challenge. 3 months from now, the arena's life and death battle. This news instantly spread throughout the Murong clan. It shocked the Murong clan in a flash. In these past years, the Murong clan had never lacked people who wanted to challenge Murong Hao, the #1 genius. But without a doubt, they were all defeated. However, this trash Murong Yu actually wanted to challenge Murong Hao? Could it be that this guy wanted to die? He's just a trash. Maybe he wants to be famous. He actually wants to challenge Murong Hao. He doesn't even look at who he is. Murong Yu? That trash who can't practice martial arts? He wants to challenge Murong Hao. I'm afraid he'll be killed by Murong Hao in one punch, right? Let's wait and see how this trash dies. Everyone was discussing spiritedly, and no one was optimistic about Murong Yu. After all, Murong Hao was at the peak of the Hotion 9th layer, and even a Xiantian Rel powerhouse. As for how the outside world talked about him, Murong Yu never cared about it. How could those short-sighted fellows know my intentions? Crippling Murong Ji and challenging Murong Hao was only Murong Yu's plan to become stronger. In fact, after practicing the Primal Chaos Heavenly Body Record, Murong Yu became more and more confident. 3 months seemed to be a very short period of time. But Murong Yu was sure that he could defeat Murong Hao after 3 months. In the scripture pavilion, Murong Yu was choosing some battle skills that were suitable for him to practice. Although these battle skills were of the secular world, Hichu was very disdainful of them. But Hichu's battle skills and cultivation methods were too advanced, and they were not something that Murong Yu could practice at his current stage. Powerful strength also needed the support of battle skills. A good combat skill could even unleash extraordinary power. There were many battle skills in the scripture pavilion, and many of them were the world's top cultivation methods. But in the end, Murong Yu only chose 2 of them. Tiger Roar Imperial Fist and Flying Cloud 4 Steps. Since starting to practice, Murong Yu's memory had become extremely powerful, and he could remember almost everything he saw. Therefore, it took him less than half a day to remember these 2 cultivation methods in his mind, and then he left the scripture pavilion and returned to the Imperial Horse Directorate. After returning to his room, Murong Yu closed the door and entered the Hichu Luoshu world. Although he was sure that he could reach the 9th layer of the Hotion realm within 3 months, he still didn't dare to relax his practice. The Tiger's Roar Imperial Fist only had 4 moves. First roar to shock, second roar to overturn lakes and seas, third roar to destroy the sky. The Tiger's Roar Imperial Fist was one of the Murong clan's top battle skills. Any child could practice it. Of course, although the children of the Murong clan could practice it, They absolutely couldn't leak it to outsiders. Morong stood on the ground and closed his eyes. After recalling the chant of the tiger's roar imperial fist in his mind, he suddenly opened his eyes and fiercely punched out. Rumble. Under the support of Morong Yu's 60 dragon strength, a violent power erupted from the punch, and it really had the power to shatter mountains and split the earth. One could even faintly see that the power of Morong Yu's punch had transformed into a fierce tiger. First roar to shock, second roar to overturn lakes and seas. Complete roar to destroy the sky. According to legend, after this battle skill was practiced to the peak, even the sky could be destroyed with a single punch. In reality, this was nothing more than an exaggeration. However, Morong Yu knew that this battle skill was very powerful. Although it might not have the power to destroy the sky, it was still easy to split open stones. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Morong Yu raised his strength to the limit and punched out again and again. The terrifying power even bombarded the void and unceasingly produced sonic booms. Even when Morong Yu was practicing, the wind from his punches vaguely carried the roar of the king of the mountains, the fierce tiger. After practicing for a while, Morong Yu discovered that he had already successfully practiced all 4 moves of the tiger's roar imperial fist. Of course, with his current strength, he could only use the first move. The last 3 moves only had the form and no power. Even if I can only use the first move, it still increased my strength by half. Morong Yu was happy in his heart and immediately stopped practicing the tiger's roar imperial fist. He began to practice another battle skill, Flying Clouds 4 steps. Flying Clouds 4 steps had a total of 4 levels. Flying Cloud step, Sky step, Decline step, Astral travel step. In reality, this was not a battle skill, but a footwork. Footwork emphasized technique, and because Morong Yu did not have any cultivation experience, even though his talent was outstanding, it was still very difficult for him to practice. Therefore, after half a day, he only looked at the first layer of this footwork and only barely succeeded. At the same time that Morong Yu was practicing, the discussion about Morong Yu in the Morong clan did not stop. Morong Yu's challenge to Morong Hao this time even alarmed the older generation of the Morong clan. However, who was Morong Yu? These seniors probably did not have any impression of him at all. However, because of their relationship with Morong Hao, they quickly learned about Morong Yu's information. However, after knowing about Morong Yu's matter, these people only laughed in disdain. He only wants to use this opportunity to become famous and get the clan's attention. These people naturally thought that Morong Yu only wanted to become famous and get the Morong clan's attention. This was because in the Morong clan, this kind of thing happened almost every day. Big brother, why don't you kill that trash? Within the Morong clan, in an independent courtyard, a roar came out. The voice was incomparably resentful. In the room, Morong Ji was angrily looking at his big brother, Morong Hao. However, if someone was here, they would be able to see that Morong Ji's arm, which was originally crippled by Morong Yu, was actually intact at this time, without any trace of injury. Immortal pill. Morong Ji must have eaten an immortal pill. Only those immortal pills could possibly save Morong Ji's crippled arm. If Morong Yu was here, he would be surprised. This kind of immortal pill, even in the Morong clan, there are only a few. Where did Morong Ji get these immortal pills? Morong Hao's expression was calm as he sat on the chair. He looked at Morong Ji with murderous intent in his eyes. It's only 3 months. After 3 months, I will be able to kill him openly. 3 months is too long. I can't wait to kill him now. Morong Ji's killing intense soared as he gnashed his teeth. Ji, don't be impulsive. This is the last immortal pill. If you have any accident, you will really be crippled. Morong Hao frowned and coldly said. Morong Ji sneered. What are you afraid of? Our mother has this kind of immortal pill. If worst comes to worst, we can ask for a few more the next time our mother comes back. Morong Ji said without caring. Even the Morong clan didn't have many of these immortal pills, but they had them, because their mother was a member of an immortal cultivation sect. After this immortal cultivation assembly, I will join an immortal cultivation sect. You are alone in the clan, so I am somewhat worried. Murong Hao's eyes flashed with a fierce killing intent. The immortal cultivation assembly was about to begin. Before leaving the clan, he must eliminate all the people in the Murong clan who dared to touch Murongji. And Murong Yu was the first. The immortal cultivation assembly was held once every 3 years. The so-called immortal cultivation assembly was only a gathering of the disciples of the various clans. Then, the disciples of the immortal cultivation sect would be selected. In this world, although martial arts were superior, after all, there was a difference between mortals and immortals. In the secular world, Xiantian realm experts were already the peak experts. However, Xiantian realm experts only had the qualifications to cultivate. Those previous experts in the secular world, in front of immortal cultivators, were completely like ants. Chapter 23. Therefore, in this world, martial artists didn't pursue the Xiantian realm, but rather immortality and longevity. Moreover, immortality wasn't very mysterious. Even in the secular world, from the elderly to the 3-year-old children, they all knew of the existence of the immortality world. However, knowing was one thing. As long as one didn't reach the Xiantian realm, one simply didn't have the qualifications to enter immortality sections. Unless one's aptitude was very outstanding and was discovered by an immortal cultivator and accepted into the sect in advance. Otherwise, if you want to become an apprentice, then participate in the triennial immortal cultivation assembly. Of course, the immortal cultivation assembly wasn't the only way for these immortality sects to accept disciples. In addition, every year, the immortality sects would open up the secular world to accept disciples. The premise was that one could find those mysterious sects and pass their trials. Moreover, those who entered the immortality sects through this method could only start from the lowest level of nominal disciple. However, those who entered the sect through the immortal cultivation assembly could directly become an official disciple of the immortality sects and could even become an apprentice. Therefore, every year's immortal cultivation assembly attracted countless clans and forces to flock over. Yes, the immortal cultivation assembly was only aimed at these clans and forces. If you didn't have any connections, you wouldn't even know where the immortal cultivation assembly was held. Murong Yu certainly knew this point. Moreover, the reason why he crippled Murong's wisdom and dueled with Murong Hao was precisely aimed at this so-called immortality sections. Although he knew about the immortal cultivation assembly before, he was only a waste and didn't have the qualifications to participate in this immortal cultivation assembly. If he wanted to participate in this immortal cultivation assembly, he must obtain the qualifications. However, how to obtain the qualifications? As long as he defeated the Murong clan's #1 genius, then he would naturally have the qualifications. He didn't believe that if he defeated Murong Hao, the Murong clan wouldn't allow him to participate in the immortal cultivation assembly. If it was really like this, then perhaps Murong Yu would directly turn over the Murong clan. In any case, he didn't have any sense of belonging to this clan. Murong Yu had the world's #1 mysterious book, Hichu Luoshu, and also the chaotic heavenly records. Even if he didn't join the immortality sects, he could still cultivate. However, Murong Yu was the only one who knew the pain. Hichu Luoshu, chaotic celestial body records. Even for the artifact spirit Hichu, these were simply too high level. It was so advanced that Murong Yu could not use it at all. Therefore, he had to join a cultivation sect. Only then would he be able to enter the legendary cultivation world and ascend to become an immortal or god. Hichu Luoshu world. Murong Yu practiced the chaotic celestial records, Tiger's Roar Imperial Fist, and Flying Clouds 4-step steps. Finally, he stopped. The chaotic celestial records was indeed one of the most powerful cultivation techniques in the world. Even though Murong Yu had barely entered the first small realm of the first layer, But after these days of cultivation, Murong-Yu's strength had already reached the Hotian's 6th layer. He punched out with 80 dragon strength. This was the benefit of the chaotic celestial body and the cultivation technique he cultivated, the chaotic celestial body record. Ordinary experts at the 9th layer of the Hotian realm only had 90 dragon strength. Murong-Yu was only at the 6th layer of the Hotian realm, but he had already reached 80 dragon strength, almost catching up with the strength of the 9th layer of the Hotian realm. However, in front of a cultivator, the Hotian realm was not even comparable to an ant. If he wanted to shine in the cultivation assembly in a few months and join a good cultivation sect, Murong-Yu had to continue to work hard, as long as he reached the Xiantian realm. Since he had beaten Murong-Hong half to death, Murong-Yu had been like a local tyrant in the Imperial Horse Directorate. He did not need to work, but the servants did not complain. As a result, Murong-Yu had been living very comfortably during this period of time. Murong-Yu left the Murong clan and walked aimlessly on the prosperous streets of an east city. At this time, the cold winter season had gradually passed, and spring was not far away. It was a rare sunny day without snow, and the streets were clean. As one of the top 10 cities in the world, the capital of the Great Xia dynasty, and Yi City was extremely prosperous. Even though the weather was still cold at this time, the streets were extremely prosperous and lively. Suddenly, Murong-Yu stopped and looked at a mansion in front of him, but his eyes showed a trace of sadness. He exhaled and said with a sigh, "Why did I come here again for no reason?" The Zhao mansion could be regarded as an aristocratic family. However, it was different from a colossus like the Murong clan. The rise of the Zhao mansion was too short, and it was far less powerful than the Murong clan. It could only be regarded as an ordinary family. However, the Zhao mansion was not simply a martial arts aristocratic family, but a business family. It controlled an extremely large amount of business. It was reasonable to say that with Murong-Yu's previous status, he had nothing to do with the Zhao mansion. However, more than 10 years ago, the Zhao mansion was just an ordinary family. It had not yet become famous. At that time, Murong-Yu was still young, and by chance, he met a daughter of the Zhao mansion, Zhao Jiqing, one of the daughters of the Zhao mansion. She had a very good relationship with Murong-Yu, and they could even be said to be childhood sweethearts. In the beginning, the Zhao mansion did not prohibit Zhao Jiqing from interacting with Murong-Yu. After all, although Murong-Yu was not very good at that time, he was still a collateral descendant of the Murong clan. However, later, as the Zhao family's business grew bigger and bigger, the people of the Zhao family looked down on Murong-Yu. Finally, when Murong-Yu was 10 years old, Zhao Jiqing was only 9 years old. At that time, Zhao Jiang had given Murong-Yu a good beating. Zhao Jiang, Zhao Jiqing's father, was a very snobbish person. That year, he severely beat Murong-Yu up, beating Murong-Yu so badly that he could not get out of bed for almost half a year. Moreover, that day, Zhao Jiang severely warned Murong-Yu not to interact with Zhao Jiqing, or else he would beat him up every time he saw him. In Zhao Jiang's words, Murong-Yu was a toad eating swan meat. After that, because of this matter, Murong-Yu was beaten up countless times by the servants of the Zhao mansion. He could not remember anymore. However, gradually, Murong-Yu deliberately avoided Zhao Jiqing. Murong-Yu was not afraid of being beaten up. The reason why he avoided Zhao Jiqing was because he did not want to make things difficult for Zhao Jiqing. Because every time Murong-Yu was beaten up, Zhao Jiqing would definitely be severely punished by Zhao Jiang. In fact, what Zhao Jiang said was not wrong. Although Murong-Yu was quite handsome, he was a waste who could not practice martial arts. Such a toad also wanted to eat Zhao Jiqing, this swan. It should be known that Zhao Jiqing was a cultivation genius. Her cultivation aptitude was even above the Murong clan's #1 genius, Murong Hao. At the age of 15, she had already reached the 8th stage of the Hotian realm. This kind of cultivation speed was very rare even in an East city, and even in the Great Xia dynasty. And this time, if she went to participate in the cultivation assembly, she would definitely be chosen by those big sects and be accepted as a disciple, becoming a cultivator. It should be known that such a genius was extremely rare even in the cultivation world. Even if Zhao Jiqing had not reached the Xiantian realm, she would definitely be fought over by all the big sects. Murong Yu stood in front of the Zhao mansion, looking at the Zhao mansion with a gloomy expression. On the other hand, the two guards of the Zhao manor looked at the trash Murong Yu with disdain. Haha, isn't this the waste to the Murong clan, Murong Yu? He's just a waste. And he wants to get the favor of the seventh miss? He really doesn't know what he's talking about. One of the guards sneered. Haha, our seventh young miss is high and mighty. She's an incomparably precious treasure. How could a piece of trash like him tame her? But then again, even in the capital, there are many people who admire our seventh Mississippi. Another guard loudly ridiculed Murong Yu. However, when they talked about the seventh miss, they could not help but show admiration in their eyes. The seventh miss they were talking about was naturally Zhao Jiqing. As they said, Zhao Jiqing was not only beautiful, but also a peerless genius. How many young talents in an East city admired them? How many nobles from the imperial palace trampled on the threshold of the Zhao mansion to ask for her hand in marriage? However, although Zhao Jiang was snobbish, he also knew what kind of path he wanted his daughter to take. Cultivation. As long as Zhao Jiqing could enter a cultivation sect and become a cultivator. So what if these nobles were the princes of the great Xia dynasty? The power and wealth of the secular world were nothing in front of an immortal cultivator. Waste. Get out of here. Otherwise, I won't be polite to you. After the two guards ridiculed Murong Yu, they saw that Murong Yu was looking at the Zhao mansion with an unchanged expression. They could not help but lose interest and began to drive Murong Yu away. A cold light flashed across Murong Yu's eyebrows. Every time he passed by here, these guards would ridicule him. Murong Yu was used to it. At this time, he really wanted to teach these lackeys who looked down on him a lesson. However, when he thought of Zhao Jiqing, he sighed and finally left the gate of the Zhao mansion. Just after Murong Yu left, there was a carriage not far behind. The carriage stopped in front of the gate of the Zhao mansion. The curtain of the carriage door was lifted slightly, revealing a beautiful face that could topple cities, but was still a little immature. Big Brother Murong, I must enter a cultivation sect. I beg for an immortal pill to change your constitution so that you can cultivate. Looking at Murong Yu's desolate back, the beautiful girl in the carriage revealed a trace of heartache. She could not bear to see him like this, but she also had a determined expression. If Murong Yu were here, he would know the identity of the beautiful girl in the carriage, Zhao Jiqing. Murong Yu did not know that Zhao Jiqing had returned after he left. I hope Jiqing can join a cultivation sect in this cultivation convention, Murong Yu thought to himself as he walked down the street in low spirits. Murong Yu had a special feeling for Zhao Jiqing. Apart from being childhood sweethearts, there seemed to be some vague feelings between them. It was just that these feelings were too hazy. Whether it was Murong Yu or Zhao Jiqing, they were not very clear. However, this hazy feeling still lingered in their hearts. Therefore, although Zhao Jiang had forcefully cut off their relationship and forbade them from seeing each other all these years, even though Zhao Jiqing, a genius, had been pursued by many young talents all these years. However, they also secretly met up with each other. Chapter 24. It was precisely because she had some feelings for Murong Yu that Zhao Jiqing wanted to join a cultivation sect and asked for an elixir so that Murong Yu could also cultivate. It was a pity that they missed this meeting. Zhao Jiqing also didn't know that Murong Yu was no longer a good-for-nothing. Every time he involuntarily passed by the gate of the Zhao mansion, Murong Yu's mood was very low. Today was the same. He was in a low mood and no longer had the interest to go shopping. He walked in the direction of the Murong clan with a dull interest. Ha! A big hand suddenly slapped Murong Yu's shoulder hard. Murong Yu was shocked. The muscles on his shoulder trembled slightly, and he was about to fight back. However, at this moment, a voice rang in his ears. When he heard this voice, Murong Yu withdrew his counterattack. Look at your dazed appearance. You must have passed by the Zhao mansion again, right? A young man appeared in front of Murong with a smile. Murong felt ashamed in his heart. Although he was in a low mood, he was too careless. If it had been an enemy, Murong would have been killed on the spot. Looking at the young man in front of him, Murong said angrily, Li Feng, you're a mess. Haven't you heard of scaring people to death? Li Feng was Murong's only good friend and best friend. The two had a very good relationship. Li Feng looked at Murong with a smile and said, looking at your appearance, I know that you're in a low mood. How about it? Do you want to go for a drink? Li Feng pointed to the blessing house behind them and said to Murong with a smile. The blessing house was actually a restaurant. Although it wasn't the best in an East city, it was still luxuriously decorated. Business was very good. Do you think I'm afraid of you? But if I drink too much, I'm afraid that Uncle Li will be distressed. While talking, the two had already walked into the blessing house. Haha, little you, it's rare for you to come. You can drink as much as you want. You make it sound like your Uncle Li is a miser. Perhaps because he heard Murong's words, a middle-aged man in the hall who looked somewhat similar to Li Feng said with a smile. Of course, Uncle Li is not a stingy person. I'm just afraid that I'll affect your business. Murong said to the middle-aged man with a smile. It's fine, it's fine. If you're free, you can come here every day to eat and drink. Your Uncle Li can guarantee that. Uncle Li said with a smile. Murong was about to speak, but he was interrupted by Li Feng. All right, you two don't need to be so polite here. Father, Xiao Yu and I will go up first. We will come down to help after a while. The one that Murong addressed as Uncle Li was Li Feng's father, Li Guo, who was also the owner of the Blessing Gathering Mansion. As for Li Feng, he was naturally the young master of the restaurant. Murong only had time to smile apologetically at Li Guo before he was immediately pulled up to the third floor by Li Feng. He directly opened a private room. In any case, Li Feng was the young master of the Blessing Gathering Mansion. Opening a private room and treating Murong to a meal was not a big deal. Murong also did not mind because he was already used to it. Xiao Yu, why do you refuse to break away from that nuisance, the Murong family? You are a branch descendant of the Murong clan, but you're still raising horses there. You're even more of a slave than a servant. Just as he sat down, Li Feng began to chatter. You see, you're my brother, right? My father is also good to you. If you come to our restaurant to help with your brain, it will be easy for you to make a name for yourself in the future. You're raising horses in the Murong clan and being bullied all day long. Don't you think you're a masochist? Before Murong but could even warm up, he was already bombarded by Li Feng. Murong only smiled as he looked at Li Feng. He did not stop Li Feng's persuasion, because he was already used to it. Moreover, he knew that if he spoke, then Li Feng would say even more. In fact, Li Feng only had one intention, and that was to let Murong leave the Murong clan and come to the Blessing Gathering Mansion to help. This was not Li Feng sympathizing with Murong or doing charity. Murong was indeed worthy of him doing so. Although Murong could not practice martial arts, he was smart. However, all along, Murong did not agree to Li Feng's request. In fact, just as Li Feng said, if he were to help here, it would be 1,000,000 times better than staying at the Murong clan. However, Murong did not agree. Why? It was not that Murong did not want to accept Li Feng's invitation or help. In fact, it was Murong's self-esteem that caused mischief. He could not practice martial arts and was a waste. He was looked down upon by the Murong clan and even those who knew him. If it was an ordinary person, they would have already given up on themselves. However, Murong did not. All these years, he endured humiliation. He insisted on staying at the Murong clan because one day he would rise up and trample all those who looked down on him under his feet. Before this, although Murong had such thoughts, he knew that he would not be able to trample others under his feet in this lifetime. However, he still insisted on it. Now, after he cultivated the chaotic celestial records, he was no longer a waste. Soon, he would be able to trample all the so-called geniuses of the Murong clan under his feet. Moreover, he knew that from the moment he was kicked off the cliff by Murong, he was no longer a person of this world. His path would be very long. He would continue to pursue the path of immortality. Murong pondered for a moment and organized his words. Just as he was about to tell Li Feng that he was no longer a waste, bang. The door of the private room was violently slammed open. Then a figure rushed in directly. It seemed that this person was the waiter of the Blessing Mansion. Li Feng frowned. Just as he was about to scold him, the waiter panicked and said, "Oh no, oh no, Master has been beaten by someone down there." What? Li Feng was shocked. He stood up abruptly and rushed out without saying a word. Murong furrowed his brows as his face turned gloomy. He grabbed the shop assistant and coldly asked, "What's going on here?" "It's the Yun clan. They came to make trouble again." Old Master only said a few words and was beaten up. The Yun clan. A cold light flashed across Murong face. He let go of the waiter's collar and walked down in large strides. The Yun clan was the family behind the Blessing Mansion's old rival, Guests Like Clouds restaurant. Guests Like Clouds was located not far from the Blessing Mansion. However, perhaps because of their poor management, their business was not as good as the Blessing Mansion's. The Yun clan was a martial arts clan and had always wanted to buy the Blessing Mansion. Li Guo was naturally unwilling. Even if it was a normal purchase, Li Guo would not agree. Moreover, the Yun clan only coveted the Blessing Mansion's business. How could they buy it at a lower price? These years, the two restaurants often had conflicts, mainly because Guests Like Clouds came to make trouble at the Blessing Mansion. Therefore, the two restaurants would often have conflicts. However, the Yun clan had always controlled the situation well. At most, they would only cause some damage. Today, however, they beat someone up. Moreover, they beat up Li Guo. It seemed that the Yun clan was getting impatient. Murong quickly walked down the stairs with a gloomy face. A cold, killing intent flashed across his face. In this world, other than his deceased parents and Zhao Jiqing, only Li Feng's family was good to him. If it was before, Murong could only be anxious at the side because he did not have the ability to help. But now, Murong did not want to see Li Feng's family being bullied. Bang! Just as Murong landed on the first floor, a black shadow flew over and landed heavily in front of Murong. Murong took a closer look and realized that this person was actually Li Feng. At this moment, Li Feng's mouth was bleeding and his face was bruised. It seemed that he had just been beaten up. "You're courting death." The anger in Murong's heart soared. He helped Li Feng up, but Li Feng pushed him aside and said in a deep voice, "Xiao Yu, hurry up and go back. Don't interfere in this matter." However, Li Feng looked at the person at the entrance of the restaurant with a furious expression. Murong glanced around and saw Li Guo sitting on the ground with a bruised face. It seemed that he was injured. On the other hand, the employees of the auspicious Gathering Mansion were also sprawled all over the ground floor. There was no one left in the hall except for the messy tables and chairs. "Yin Hai, you bastard, I'll kill you." Li Feng's eyes were red as he looked at the 18 or 19-year-old youth at the entrance. "Just you," Yin Hai sneered. "You reckless fool. Our Yun clan has given you enough time over the years. But you two reckless fools have not been tactful. Do you think our Yun clan doesn't dare to understand you? Let me tell you, from today onwards, the auspicious Gathering Loft will change owners. You bastard, I'll kill you." Li Feng gnashed his teeth and looked at Yun Hai with murderous intent. He was about to pounce on him. However, he was caught by Murong and couldn't move. "Throw these two idiots out of here. Make sure they don't break anything here. These belong to our Yun clan," Yun Hai said with an indifferent smile. "Bastard." Li Guo was so angry that his whole body trembled. His eyes were spitting fire as he glared at Yun Hai. However, the father and son were both from an ordinary family. How could they compare to an aristocratic family like the Yun clan? "Shall you let go of me? Go home immediately. This matter has nothing to do with you, so don't interfere." Li Feng turned to look at Murong and said in a deep voice, "Why should I? You and Uncle have been so good to me all these years. If I, Murong just leave like this, am I still human? I'm definitely interfering in this matter," Murong said firmly. Li Feng panicked and quickly grabbed Murong's hand. Yin Hai and the others were all martial artists. Even Li Feng wasn't their match. Murong, who had always been called trash, wanted to interfere in this matter. Wasn't he courting death? Thus, Li Feng only grabbed Murong Yu's hand and didn't let him interfere. Seeing Li Feng's anxious appearance, Murong Yu was greatly moved. At this moment, Li Guo's words made Murong Yu even more determined. Xiao Yu, this matter has nothing to do with you. You should leave. Uncle Li doesn't want you to get hurt. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.